Raffle. It's a raffle, so you win them. Alrighty. I don't think we need the gavel. Good evening. It's 7:30, so let's get started. Thank you for the full house tonight. Thank you for all the boards and commissions who are joining us in a joint work session. Let's call this work session to order. Let's start with roll call, please.
Certainly, Mayor. Mr. Egan?
Here.
Conley?
Here.
Ms. Downs?
Here.
Ms. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Snyder is absent for work. Ms. Underhill?
Here.
And Mayor Hardy?
Here.
And for the Planning Commission, Chair Calmont?
I'm here.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Here.
Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Freelander? Mr. Krasner? Ms. Kravinsky? Kravinsky. My apologies. Mr. Polinsky. All right. And for the EDA, Chair Lickenhouse, Mr. Bregman, Mr. Coyle, Mr. Quinn. And for the CACT, thank you, sir.
Great.
Letty, could I just, Mr. Snyder in his absence sent a message to the clerk's office that asked me to just read into the record, if it's okay?
Sure.
To do so, okay. I will not be attending tonight's work session due to work-related travel as part of the U.S. delegation to a meeting under the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The issues to be discussed at the meeting include the mitigation and financing of natural disaster risk. Although I am not at tonight's meeting, I am fully engaged on the issues that are on the agenda and will participate as appropriate in the future, as well as reviewing the recording of this meeting. Finally, I want to thank Cindy Mester, the Legislative Committee, the City Council, and citizens for the active engagement in legislation this year. This will continue. I also wanted to mention that I did submit a written statement in my individual capacity arguing against by-right development mandates on local government from the General Assembly, but also in support of work on housing issues. So that's from Mr. Snyder. Thanks.
Great. Well, let's get started on the agenda. I know that we have EDA and Planning Commission members here for our first item, which is the Virginia Village Roadmap Initiating Resolution. So thank you all for joining us.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Hardy. So Virginia Village is our first item for discussion tonight, and maybe just a quick review. In November, staff came before council in a work session to discuss a draft roadmap for next steps on Virginia Village. Tonight, and then subsequent to that, in January, we had a briefing for the City Council on some of the numbers with respect to affordable housing as laid out in our affordable living policy. Committed affordable units that we have that are committed in the city today, those that are going to expire over the next 10 years, and discussed Virginia Village in the context of larger city policy. Tonight, what we want to do is take a next step on the draft roadmap that we laid out to council before and discuss in more detail a public engagement strategy where we will work city and community together to refresh our vision as enshrined in our land use planning documents for the Virginia Village area. The specific action that we're asking is for council to take an action to initiate to adopt an initiating resolution at your meeting next week to allow staff to begin this engagement with the public on the future of Virginia Village. So we have our planning director and planning staff here, Mr. Matusik and Mr. Trainer. We have Dana with our housing staff, and I think Kayleen Mark is online as well. And we look forward to describing that process for council and then getting council feedback and ultimately direction on taking those next steps. It's great to be here tonight with the Planning Commission and the Economic Development Authority. Maybe one other note that I will share. We have what I think will be one additional meeting with the Economic Development Authority on the memorandum of agreement on the management of the Virginia Village properties. I think there's some final tweaks we want to make to that with the EDA at their meeting next week, and then we'll come back to council with a report on that document. Mr. Matusik, can I turn it over to you after that introduction?
Thank you, Wyatt. Good evening, everybody. So one of the things we wanted to highlight is really with each visit, show some additional information, highlight some of the analysis that staff has been conducting behind the scenes, and really for the broader audience that is watching, in reviewing these materials, kind of highlight more and more detail about what to expect, what we were trying to engage them about, and what that roadmap begins to look like the further and further out you go. So with tonight's materials, the presentation we're going to have for you really tries to visualize some of the content we had in the staff report, but also kind of set the stage and adjust expectations for really the next 2 months of engagement. And so again, it's much easier to predict what's going to happen in the near term. I think once we get beyond the next 2-3 months, we kind of have to logically anticipate what the feedback might be, and we want to project too much until that engagement takes place. So with us, both Jack and Dana are going to cover a number of items. I'm going to conclude with some of the next steps, but presentation's fairly brief and hopefully kind of answers some of the initial questions with that. So Jack, if you want to start.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Mr. Matusik. Good evening, Council. So my next couple of slides are going to go over just what the request is and kind of the scope of that request. So this item before you tonight is a work session on an initiating resolution. This would enable staff to go out and start the community engagement process so that council could then consider possible amendments to the South Washington Street and downtown small area plans, specifically as those two documents relate to guidance on redevelopment of the Virginia Village area. And we've got a graphic here on the right that shows kind of, just so everyone's oriented, where that is on South Maple Avenue between the Bull America and the tax analysts building. So as a refresher on what a small area plan is and its authority, you can kind of consider these as like mini comprehensive plans. They cover about a 10-block area in the city. This map shows kind of where all of our small area plans cover. They generally cover the commercial corridors in the city along Washington Street and Broad Street. And so the two that pertain to Virginia Village are down here labeled as number 2 and 3, the corresponding areas there. So small area plans are not part of the comprehensive plan. They're not enforced the same way, but they do get more granular and reinforce the recommendations and vision in the comprehensive plan. And so those two are linked together through a intensive community vetted process because those recommendations get so granular and are so geographically specific. And small area plans cover a lot of things. And we've listed some of the most important ones here, including future land use, mobility and access, character and design in utilities and environment. And so as this idea relates to what the proposal is, the initiating resolution, the necessity to update these two small area plans, these really come from two ideas. And the first is that the city's recently updated its comprehensive plan with adoption of the affordable living policy just last August, which makes really specific affordable housing goals for the city by 2040. And the policy it's been following with the Virginia Village Property Acquisition Strike Fund, which began in 2022, where the city's been, when the opportunity arises, able to acquire properties in the Virginia Village neighborhood for the eventual redevelopment and expansion of affordable housing in that area. And so these small area plans that were adopted back in 2014 and 2013 are going to inform the redevelopment guidance of this area. And so before any requests for proposals that can go out soliciting proposals for any redevelopment in this area, it's prudent that these small area plans and the recommendations in them be as up to date and reflective of the comprehensive plan and the community's vision as we can make them. And so this graphic shows just a kind of zoom in on the Virginia Village site that's outlined in yellow. And again, kind of zooms in and shows just the kind of area that the two small area plans cover. So Virginia Village, is covered by two different small area plans, which have relational recommendations with each other, but may need to be reconciled, again, with those two documents in the community. I'll just mention that the kind of land areas we're talking about is 4.5 acres in total is the neighborhood total land area, and 3.5 acres. So most of Virginia Village is within that the number 2 area, the South Washington Street small area plan, and then about 1 acre in the downtown small area plan. And again, what the kind of reconciliation or updated consideration process would focus on would be focused obviously on Virginia Village. So we wouldn't be talking about total rewrites of either document because a lot of effort goes into those, and a lot of effort will go into updating these plans, even with the specific drilling down of Virginia Village. But these will consider, the future land uses that are again recommended, that are in the plan, and just making sure that those are still resonating with the community, including buffering and screening of any redevelopment that happens in the site. And then any, building design considerations. This can include height, density, and step backs, but isn't limited to only those specific considerations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dana to cover this next slide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Jones. So I just wanted to let you know that we've already, thank you, Phil. We've already started letting folks know what's going on in the community. So the outreach has already started. As a matter of fact, last week, the team, it was Jack, Zoe, and Kayleen, went to the community and spoke to current residents that live in Virginia Village right now. I think it was about 5 that came to a meeting, and they gave them an overview of what is going on, that there's the possibility for some redevelopment in the future, and assured everyone that, that we do have a relocation policy and this type of thing. They asked questions. They all know Kayleen, so they were reassured. And so I thought the meeting, from what she said, went really well. And then with the Winter Hill, and then also for those that weren't there, they're going to give flyers, and future meetings, they'll get reminders on that. And so for the Winter Hill community, which is the townhomes and the apartments that are both there, with the apartments, they met with the staff over at Winter Hill Apartments, and they're going to have a meeting with residents over there in April. They have a brunch already set up, so they're going to provide translation in Vietnamese, and so they can let folks know what's going on over there. And then as far as the HOA, they're planning 2 meetings that Matt's going to talk about. One is going to take place at Winter Hill in the community room, so they can walk over. Anybody can get that information, and they'll get regular updates and notifications. And then with the Tenor Hill Heritage Foundation, which with the Hendersons and all that area, Matt has been having regular communication with them, letting them know what's going on since they're right across the street. And then as far as other residents, we're going to be having a social media campaign to get the information out. And just as an aside, we are finalizing the relocation policy also as well, and let everybody know that. I'll pass it to Matt.
All right. So focusing on the next 2 months, beginning with March, what we're really trying to do is find folks ample opportunities to meet with us. We're focusing on weeknight and weekend activities, depending on schedules, and trying to really revisit all the policies that Jack just finished going through, where there's a lot of meaningful and I think fairly accurate, guidance that I think we can really benefit and continue to emphasize. We want to make sure that all the work that went into those efforts is still valid, and I think can very easily apply to Virginia Village. But we want to make sure we do revisit them because of the additional affordable housing aspects of this focus. So once we've had those opportunities in March, we want to come back in April and kind of share what we've heard, how we are synthesizing it, and really by that point begin to have a better sense of how much, if any, changes do we really need to have to those area plans, because maybe the feedback is such that exactly as written is how we should proceed. So we won't know until some point in April what that picture looks like. And we want to be very thoughtful about engaging the community, have that conversation, and wait until that moment before we can verify what the actual amendments are. So if you look at our calendar that's in the staff report, In the second half of April, we want to have another work session to come back and share those findings, by which point we would have a better sense of not just what updates to each area plan we need to consider, but if there are also opportunities and benefits to memorialize that updated vision in the city code. So there might be some implications where to really make sure development can proceed in a predictable fashion, should we also amend the zoning ordinance to reflect those two small area plans. And that will definitely elevate that feedback that we're hearing from the community into something that has to be followed by any developer that chooses to redevelop that property. So once we have that work session in late April, the next 2-3 months would really focus on the boards and commission and the usual roadshow of visiting with much more technical information, having a better sense of any final adjustments that are needed, and then going through the first and second reading that currently is targeting us to conclude in June. So if you look on the next slide, how does that play with the timeline that we are also tracking on the request for proposals? So as we are conducting the engagement for March and April, we are working behind the scenes to kind of develop a draft request for proposals that could be issued later this year. We are contemplating partnering with a real estate advisory services consultant to help us not just develop it, but also implement and review the proposals that might come in. And all of that, I think, would really start to look at May as the critical month where by early May, we believe we should have enough guidance back from the community about what we've heard, what needs to continue to be the vision for that property, and feed that information into a fully developed RFP by that point, such that we can begin to issue it and go through the usual channels where we're going to have an introductory meeting, answer questions from potential, development teams, and obviously have a submission deadline of late June, by which point we want to have all that information at our disposal. So as the boards and commissions make their way through the recommendations we've developed, if there's any additional tweaks that come out of that process, we have built in time for potential addendums to the RFP if we need to issue updates, however minor. And once that information is there and we get to late June, we're leaving ourselves a 2-month window for the summer to actually have the selection committee review the proposals and then ultimately identify the top bid from that process. So this kind of gives you a 6-month forecast. And for the next 2 or 3 months, we generally anticipate where the council meetings might be. Beyond May, obviously, we're trying to be respectful of the budget process and kind of strategically find additional opportunities for those conversations. And so the final slide that we have for you gets into some of the next steps. As Wyatt mentioned, we're going to come back on Monday for the initiating resolution, which is a critical step, allowing us to engage the community and make sure everybody's on the same page. I mentioned the partnership to help us finalize the RFP document, because that work can continue to happen in parallel. And then finally, beginning some initial conversations about what does the selection committee look like, when do we need to establish it, kind of the membership for that as well, and there was a lot of interest. So I think we have a few months to kind of get that in place such that by July, a lot of it will be in place for us to make some progress. So with that, we'll pause for questions.
Great. Well, thank you. It seems like a very thorough update since our last discussion, so we appreciate more clarity as the next few months unfold. So thank you to staff for all the work on that. I'm going to start with questions or comments from our guests. Planning Commission, Chair Comont.
I may have a few things, and my colleagues, I think, might as well, but I can start. One thing I'm wondering about was, as you stated, Matt, whether we would need to be updating the zoning map to allow for redevelopment there. And I was also curious if we're planning to come up with a redevelopment plan for Virginia Village, or is that something that's going to happen as part of the negotiation or the proposal RFP?
So currently, staff is looking at various mechanisms by which the feedback we're going to receive over the next 2 months can find its way into the zoning ordinance. Ideally, we're looking ahead into once all these steps take place and we find ourselves in, next winter timeframe, assuming everything goes as planned, what is the most predictable redevelopment process and review of any future site plans that we can anticipate? To do that, what you really want to do is capture that feedback that currently lives in small area plans and find a way to embed it in the zoning ordinance such that if it's there, everybody understands, developer, community, staff, what is appropriate for that site. And I think if we can do that in a meaningful way without overly prescribing every single element of design, I think we give ourselves a chance to capture the intent, but enable some flexibility for developers to, I think, address a lot of issues that we just simply can't without a proposal in front of us. So it's a delicate process and exercise, but I think we can get there, and in the process save everybody some time, because if not for the strategic approach, we simply could get into a 2-3 year window to kind of do it, in a unorganized fashion, so.
Okay, that's helpful. Mr. Stevens?
Just a couple of comments by way of early feedback. I think it's good that we're starting out with modifying the small area plans as relatively early in the process, and use that as a tool to get input from various stakeholders throughout the community. I think that's a good way to go about this. It does seem a little rush to me as far as trying to get everything in a very tight time frame, but I know you're going after these low-income housing tax credit, and am I right that because of that, it kind of compresses the need to compress the schedule in terms of what you have here? But in any event, if there is, I think, given the complexity of the issue to people that have not been following this necessarily, it's going to seem very fast. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Polinsky?
Thanks for this overview. Just one question. So you're envisioning, it may be premature to answer this question, but you're envisioning that this area would be a mix of affordable housing and mixed-use market rate housing. Is that how you're looking at this, or is it too soon to have an answer to that?
I guess yes and yes. Thus far, in a lot of the conversations we've had, some of which were with participants that developed the earlier area plans, that has been kind of the sentiment of kind of mixing that, but doing so within the site. And I think there's some strong opinions whether a mixed income scenario could also present itself within a building itself, or rather as a site at large. So I think that's a debate we're going to continue to have. But that is our expectation, and I think there's a lot of benefits to having a mixed income condition for that entire property, so.
Great. That was the only question I have, and I appreciate.
Thank you. Very thoughtful roadmap, I think. My job is still, as it always was, to be the old man in a hurry. So I encourage us to be ambitious and to keep to this schedule as much as we possibly can. The only question that I had was when Dana was talking about reaching out to the people who are residents there now. I assume there are, sort of two parties who have interest in, particularly keen interest in all this. One is the folks who live there now, and the other is the people who own the buildings in which they do live. Does your outreach plan, when does your outreach plan bring in the landowners and give us the opportunity to see what our potential is to buy more of the units and move forward with a bigger project?
I would just jump in to say, we've been trying to reach out to the owners for a long time, and we kind of ramped up those efforts since November. I don't know, I know Cindy and Brendan have been our kind of lead on that. Cindy, if you kind of have, and just in terms of numbers of all the ones we've had contact with recently.
Certainly, I want to confirm that actually we have sent letters to all the property owners that we hadn't already had formal contacts with. And after those letters, we've heard from 3 more groupings, because a couple owners own a couple properties. So we've had initial follow-up, and they've all expressed, keep us posted on this roadmap and/or to sit down with us.
Good, okay, I think that's great. I think that covers my main concern. I do remember we heard from one of the property owners when we were talking about parking issues, and that fellow in particular seemed to have keen interest in what was going to happen. So it's important that whatever we plan to do, we do take into consideration the folks who are living there. Is the idea that they would be relocated to other affordable opportunities in the city or near the city? Is that?
Well, we have a relocation plan and policy that we're finalizing. And, you know, it addresses those things, relocation for folks that live there. And the policy is for any property that's redeveloped in the city or anytime there's displacement. The owners are encouraged to follow our relocation policy.
All right. I can't speak for the chair and vice chair of Planning Commission, of course, but I'd hope that we would be able to be of whatever use we could be to the council in terms of hearing from the community. It was always useful to have folks come, hear the same things that you all are hearing, but in a different environment, and a, opportunity to delve into some details that maybe you all, particularly during budget season, don't have the opportunity to do. And I hope we would be able to do that and be of help. Thank you.
Thank you for that offer. I was actually going to make that request, given that the spring timeline is when we'll be hot and heavy in budget season, so. Vice Chair Coyle.
Yes, thank you. Given how long the EDA has been involved in this, I'd rather change it to, we're the young men in a hurry. Phil, sorry. But you probably know this, but we've had many good work sessions with the city manager and staff over the last at least 2 years trying to move this further along. And as Wyatt said, we're about to finish our agreement. We had a very good, frank discussion about what the continuing role of the EDA would be in the development of the project, since we currently own the 9 or 10 that are there. So that part, I think, for us is all coming to conclusion, which is very exciting. We can move forward. And then the second thing I would say, and I'm sure my colleagues agree, this roadmap is what we've been looking for a long time, just to feel like this was real. And I feel like what you've laid out today, Matt, is really exciting, and we can move this as best we can. Although we don't want to give the neighborhoods the sense that we're in a hurry until Dana gets everything in place with communications and such. But we're very excited about it, and thanks for all the hard work.
Anyone else on the EDA?
Just a quick question. There was a comment made about modifying the small area plans. What do you mean by modification? Are you talking about consolidation, or are you talking, because they're in two different zones right now, right? Two different areas.
Correct. So there's two ways of approaching it, or two phases to this. One is simply, what is the entirety of the guidance that both plans present for this property? And that isn't involved or located in two different documents. Part of the exercise in front of us is to revisit all of that, regardless of where it's located, and simply ask the question, is all of this still valid? And we suspect in a lot of cases it is. I think it was strategically worded to be just general enough where I think it would apply in many different scenarios or development options. So right now, if you ask me, I don't think the plans are going to change that much. And I think the community actually would prefer it that way, because that would make sure that we are true to all the work they put in earlier. We're not just ignoring that guidance and all the work that went into those documents. At the same time, I think we have an opportunity to kind of do some cleanup. So if there are competing guidance statements, if there are just very difficult ways of finding what that guidance is, because you have to reference two different plans, they're lengthy, maybe there is some effort that we can explore over the next 2-3 months of should it all live in one document, now that we are where we are. So that question is definitely ahead of us. I don't know what the answer to that is, but we'll certainly bring it to the various boards and commissions for consideration.
Yeah, I would argue, if you're trying to send a message to the development community, that the more consolidated a piece of property could be, the easier it is to have discussions. And if you've got to jump back and forth across, even though they're kind of theoretical jurisdiction lines, it always becomes a problem when you're trying to figure out how to market that. So I would really argue that you should probably consolidate it into one property in terms of how you're looking at it with respect to these plans.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and just tie back the last few points. The needle that we're threading simply indicates that with respect to timing, we believe we have enough to proceed forward, which is a very significant signal that sends to all the property owners, to the renters. Even if we go full steam ahead, it's still quite a bit of time before any kind of change actually happens to that property. So those are two different communication strategies, and I think each entity is very differently focused on this because they have clearly different, challenges and concerns. So we'll kind of continue to push on both sides.
Yeah. How long would it take to consolidate if you were to go in that direction? That's action that the council takes, right?
And when you say consolidate,
Meaning turn it all, put it all under one SAP rather than two.
in terms of which document it lives, or consolidate from a real estate perspective?
No, in terms of your documents.
Oh,
Because right now, it's.
that's fairly easy.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else from the,
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think we're moving along in the right pathway. I'm not sure I have anything to add. You do have slightly different zoning on there too, that's a factor, but no, I think keep pushing.
thank you. I'm sure council will have questions or comments. I'm going to start this way and we'll go around the horn.
Just a quick comment on this. I guess I was mostly interested in how the community engagement process is going to go. And you don't have to have an answer for this right now, but a lot of research finds that people who show up to public meetings, people here, are a very small self-selected group. And so also disproportionately higher income homeowners. And so it's important to include those who are nearby in the discussions, but I also want to make sure that we include the broader community, people who aren't homeowners, people who live nearby, people who might want to even live in this sort of place. Other ways we end up with a very narrow view of community feedback that we're getting. And so I just want to make sure that we don't end up with like a highly biased source and something that actually does reflect what the community is looking for.
I couldn't agree more.
Great, thank you.
Mary Beth?
Thank you. On the community outreach, a couple thoughts. I just want to make sure you're reaching out to both the Cherry Hill and the Winter Hill HOAs and the affordable housing. So there's 3 groups there of residents. Okay. As far as getting to people, I know there are a considerable number of kids at a bus stop there. So it's a bus stop visit is always a good way to reach families. Previously at another event that I had been working in the community, Borek G, the restaurant there, offered that they would be willing to allow people to come and sit in there and have a community meeting there at a time when they're not super busy. So that would be an indoor spot where you could gather some people. There are a couple things that, as we're talking about the area plan, I think that's one chunk. The other chunk is the people that live near it now, and you mentioned the relocation policy, Dana. Is this a brand new policy?
No, pretty much every locality has a relocation policy that they follow. We've always had one, and we're just updating it. As a matter of fact, it was used, I think it was last year, when Roosevelt Towers, there was some work done on the building, and residents had to be displaced, so we gave them our relocation policy, and, they followed it. So that's how it works, and it outlines, that they would have priority when whatever is redeveloped when we come back, and, I mean, it's very detailed, and Sally has gone through it.
Okay. So if this were to happen, if there's a family like with kids in school, would we try to relocate them within the boundaries, or would we say if we, it gets a little tricky?
Yeah, we can't really say on that yet.
Okay.
We have to work that piece out.
Work that piece out.
And figure that out. But we do know that there might be some, school implications.
And since we've been talking about this as one of the few naturally affordable housing areas in the city, anywhere we would relocate them to, we'd have to ensure that they could still afford to pay that rent, or would the city chip in to help that?
Yeah, the city would would pay the difference.
Pay the difference. And then would we make sure that they would be able to come back to the new
Yes,
spot? And that's another piece of it.
yes.
Okay. And then, my last question is just about environmentalism and the sustainability part of it, and making sure that whatever we put out in an RFP does include all of the GOEP and SEEP and other goals that the city has, because this would be a significant development where we could include all of those environmental goals. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much. Mr. Matusik, I thought the staff report was excellent. It really, I read it from start to finish, and I thought it was really just very comprehensive. And for anyone who wants to know about this project, I think I recommend reading the staff report. I thought it was great. Did a really good job with that. A couple things. So if you look at, Taya, if you can put up the slide where it has the properties that we own. I think it's, what is that, page 4? So those, thank you. So those townhouses, this is with the engagement piece again. You know, you can see the Winter Hill townhouses that butt right up against those properties. And so I would hope that maybe we even, for those specifically, maybe we put door hangers on those specific houses. Because again, those are the ones that are going to be most directly impacted. I know we've talked about buffers and setbacks and that sort of thing, but again, those would be the ones, obviously, that would be most impacted. A couple of the things. So in reading the staff report, I thought it was interesting about that. So kind of along what Ms. Connolly said. So the residents move and they come back in, and now their rent in this nicer, still affordable housing, but it still might be more than they were paying when it was Virginia Village. How does the council then have to budget for that to make up that difference?
That's something that we're because those rents at Virginia Village are really, really low.
I would assume, yeah.
Very low, some of them. And so that's something that we're addressing in the relocation policy now. Kayleen has been meeting with Sally, because, you know, when it's affordable, the rents will be set at like 60% AMI, but some of those rents are way lower than, I mean, really, really low.
Right, okay. we'd
So,
have to-
because some of them have not had a rent increase ever.
Right, and
So,
that's, you know, the property, whoever worded it very well diplomatically in the staff report, but it's because the property is not well maintained, so.
And I think there's two exercises or two times we're going to go through this. You know, if this moves forward, there's an interim search to locate folks within the city as best as we can during the course of construction. So that's like a 2 to 3 year window. As they come back, I think what we have still ahead of us is an opportunity where looking at who's there today, right? What AMI categories are we serving? Perhaps even elsewhere in the city, we know we have a couple projects that have expiring ADUs. Understanding what AMI ranges those units represent could be something we could also incorporate into the RFP as a potential goal or target, so that that project, which also actually helps make it more competitive as it serves various AMI levels, could it strategically, knowing what we're going to feed it, target the units that we actually want to return. So if anything, I would view that as a temporary shift, but ultimately returning the AMI categories to city limits in the form of a new multifamily building. But that's something that once a developer is selected, it can help us better understand like what's really within reach and how deep are the affordability subsidies.
Okay, yeah. I was going to add that besides replacement of the AMI units in Virginia Village, I think that affordable living policy that we adopted last year called for actually going deeper below 60%, because that's a real need across the city, hence our investment in the CCAUs. But Virginia Village could be another place that would serve those lower income, deeper affordable ones.
That's right. No, and then just, yeah, and I think this is to, I think it was Mr. Kravinsky mentioned this. So looking at, and looking, at the mixed piece, the mixed part of it, and also looking at those, again, on that slide, all of the ones on Maple that are still, that are not owned by the city. So this is just curiosity. We'll just look to keep working with those owners and then just, maybe down the line, something, I read in the staff report that those could be actually market-based townhouses to help cover some of the development costs. Am I understanding that right? That was one idea I thought was in the staff report, something about, maybe those are more, not quote-unquote affordable, but they're more.
Correct. That logic would apply to the parcels that are in the green under city/EDA ownership as part of a larger, I think, financial package.
Right.
What I think is still ahead of us, and I think we're going to get into with the community, is how much of this property should include residential typologies overall versus how much of it should be park space.
Okay.
And I think that's a theme that comes up with both area plans, and knowing what we control, knowing the limited opportunities for redevelopment, that might start to signal where future opportunities for open space might be. And I think we'll try our best to kind of capture that over the next 2 months to set expectations for additional property owners that may want to approach the city in future engagements.
Okay. But we're sort of leaving it open. I guess my question is, we're leaving it open. Well, one of the things we talked about in our staff retreat was also just, the fact that we don't have many starter homes in the city anymore, that we have a lot of our little, sort of mom and pop small ramblers are knocked down and huge houses are built up. And so I think this is actually Sally Gillette's idea, but, could you, maybe this, and again, maybe this is when we can have some of those properties on Maple, but could you have some small, modest starter homes there, as sort of a mix? So we could just keep that as an open mind for down the road for those properties. Is that reasonable?
I think the conversation will continue until we have a developer selected, and with their assistance and design team and economic strategist, better understand with the 3, 4, 5 different parcels
Right.
that we have that are particularly scattered,
Right.
and who knows how many others we may have by that point, what is the best scenario on locating potentially for sale products, I'll leave it at that,
Right.
that help us financially make the multifamily building more
Right.
realistic.
Right.
And kind of make sure we have a great starting position for the local contribution towards that greater financial package.
Right.
So I think it would be premature to say exactly what that housing typology
No,
looks
but
like
that
now.
makes sense.
But I think they might help us with that.
That makes sense. Kind of sweetens the deal a little bit. Okay, thank you very much.
Erin?
I have a few items, and I, like everyone, appreciate the work that's gone into this, the amount of detail that's in the staff report, and I just want to echo the appreciation for involving different community members and sort of being proactive about going to affected residents in particular, including the rental community at Virginia Village. I'm going to ask questions about a few sets of lines in the staff report, because I just want to make sure that when we get out into the community, that what I think are not, they're not inconsistencies, but they're the tensions in this project, that we are appropriately conveying limitations on sort of what is or is not in our control. And I don't know that this fully captures, right, like the competing dynamics here where we don't own all of the properties and where there are private interests at stake regardless of what RFP kind of we put out. So as general comments, real quick, I'll just say I echo Alan's remark about I do think it makes sense to get this into one single POA and to not have them straddling the 2 POAs, so I would be in support of that. I would like to get a copy of the relocation policy, if you can provide it to council when it's updated, so that we can think about, this for budget implications and just planning reasons, what relocation expenses sort of look like at the same time that we're talking about, possible expansion of the CCAU program for sunsetting ADUs. And then just we talk about sort of the plan of finance for a redevelopment project, but at some point I think it would be helpful to also discuss, like, for the city, the fiscal impact of a project depending on sort of what the RFP proposal looks like, so that we don't leave that half of the conversation behind, especially as additional, legislation is kind of working through the General Assembly and a lot more lots may become, available for affordable housing throughout the city. Okay, so then specifics. On line 140, we talk about the phased redevelopment approach, allowing for several uses, our portion being sufficient for meaningful affordable housing, and then the remaining half could be used for the community amenities or market rate townhomes. So I guess when we have the conversation, I just want to be intentional about how we talk about that, and that if the overall site looks like city parcels get redeveloped and the currently privately owned parcels become the community space, that we have no control over those privately owned parcels ultimately being community space, because private owners could decide like what they want to do with that space, right? So that it's not drawn in a way that people have an expectation for what happens in phase two, when we don't currently have control over phase two, and the RFP won't be kind of necessarily encompassing phase two, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Then on 173 to 76, I guess we talk about the RFP, having number of total affordable units, AMI, building design, and other considerations. And then the community conversations mostly going to building design, land use, kind of, impacts, and then community amenities. I think that sort of the density of the project, in addition to the building design, is going to be an area of community interest. And so I guess I wouldn't want that to just drop out of the conversation. So because it's in one and not the other, I didn't know if it was intentional in having it in the RFP piece and not in the community conversation piece.
Yeah, and I think we're comparing what information and what detail currently lives in each of the small area plans. I think part of the intent is to your last 2 points, is generally try to stay at that same level of detail, even when we're done. And I think to date, when you look at those plans, it doesn't really tell you what a phased approach could look like. It doesn't tell you proportionally how much of the space should be for residential uses versus for open space. So I think being mindful of what future scenarios might want to present themselves and not foreclosing on those, and at the same time, being true to, I think, the flexibility that a developer would need, where my guess is where we're probably going to end up is kind of shaping the building envelope, if you will, kind of this is your box to play with, and then making sure maybe it doesn't go too high, which is a consistent feedback that we continue to hear. But in terms of prescribing an actual density, that might be very difficult, not having some of the proposals ahead of us. And neither of the plans did that, with one exception where I think 2.5 acres, or FAR, I think may have been highlighted.
And I guess I raise it more of a consideration, just even in density for purposes of community amenities. So if you're talking about, 120 units versus 300 units somewhere, right? Then you start thinking differently about what green space, what park space, what amenities, what, different things do you potentially need or want on site, or, other considerations to be thinking about kind of elsewhere within that small area. And so I would just say, I think it's a somewhat important piece of the conversation. But then on lines 195 to 198, I would just be careful about framing here. When I read it, it sort of said having a community center or having green space, either in whole or in part, could be a recommended land use option and would preserve low-density buffers, but would displace the residents currently residing in the neighborhood. So that seems strange to me, right? If people are there to say, well, because you're seeking green space, the result of your seeking green space is that people are going to be displaced, even if the people where the green space might be in a higher density building that's still within the neighborhood. So to just be careful on those sorts of false trade-offs, maybe.
So I think what you're highlighting are not exact quotes from the existing small area plans, but generally what's there today. And I think you're highlighting a great example of something we want to revisit to make sure we all understand it. And really what the role of these area plans is, which is simply to highlight that if and when the property owner is willing to consider some change to their property, completely in their control, not something we're going to force, these are the options available to you. This is the vision we all work with the community to establish. So I think that guidance will inform when and how they may want to pursue that change, in addition to the way the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance might as well. So it's really just guidance, but it's still fully in the control of the property owner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned if we put a park on someone's property, and then, like, the property owner gets to decide on putting something other than a park on their property, even if the park is part of the small area plan, right? So that's all I'm saying, like, so I don't know.
I mean, we can't compel anybody to put a park
Yeah,
in
that's
there,
what
right?
I
This is
mean,
This is
so-
assuming we have control of the
Right,
property.
right, right.
And then how does this match to our small area plan goals and say, hey, we talked about needing green space, part of this will be park.
Right.
But this is not signaling to those owners, you should put a park in lieu of your
Right.
Yeah,
quad
but when we
there.
put an RFP out, the RFP is going out to the things that we own. And we're not putting, I mean, who knows how it will turn out, but the park is probably not gonna be part of the our part of the RFP is what I'm guessing. And so I'm just saying, we need to be careful, because if we're like, this is the redevelopment plan and what this looks like during the community conversation, we don't have a lot of control over what the entirety of the parcel look like, even though we might have a long-term vision about what it could ideally become, right?
So I'm going to tie your latest and your first statement together because they actually connect. Because of what we own and because of the reason we were purchasing those lots, some of that guidance is already embedded in our past actions, our past staff reports, your actions. So I think if everybody just collects the wealth of information that exists over the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's pretty clear why we purchased those properties. And when that becomes clear, the next logical conclusion is, well, then where and when do we see park space? And without even filling that gap, people can reach their own conclusions. But that's something we're probably going to revisit during this process.
And then finally, on starting at 255 to 257, and this is just I guess the timeline, right? Or maybe it's the LIHTC piece or the timing piece of it. I'm still concerned that we're having the community conversations, but that the RFP development is happening like now or next month or whatever to get this in line, and that there's going to be a concern that the RFP is sort of like baked, so to speak, regardless of what the community conversations may be. And so, given that it's already aggressive, I would just want us to think about that, because for me, the notion that we have a deadline for submissions at the end of June, or it might even be quicker than that, and standing up a selection committee and whatnot, I feel like we could run just into some issues with overall community buy-in.
So I'm glad you raised that, because that's probably one of the few elephants in the room we're going to get into over the next few months. That's a perfectly natural concern, and for some, I think, anxiety. And it is aggressive. I'm not going to lie to anybody that it isn't. But it is perfectly doable, because if you look at any request for proposals that involve something like this at this scale, a huge portion of that RFP document is boilerplate legal language, some of which involves finances, some of it involves other things that our city attorney is going to require we put in. Some of it, our consultants were just given as best practices. Maybe 5% of that entire document is going to have the conclusions from this process. And all we have to do to be mindful of time and prepare ourselves effectively, managing time, is to leave ourselves a couple of placeholders, so when that feedback happens, then we have something to fill in those gaps. But there's no reason why that preclude us from developing the rest of the 95% of that document, because it's just going to be such a huge lift. And again, I would say, I'm rounding, 95% of it is not going to be about the feedback we're getting, but simply all the other boilerplate things that we have to include for that effort to be, I think, strategic, and for developers to know what to submit. So I don't want to ignore it, because I think it is a very aggressive schedule, but I think we're communicating to everyone that we're not just pushing it out and not waiting for feedback. That feedback is going to, at some point, potentially hold up the RFP timeline until we have that feedback from the community.
But what's really driving it is is it the March deadline for that tax credit? Okay, so what if we don't make that deadline, then what happens?
So even if we make it, but the selected developer and their approved site plan with our contribution does not win that year's tax credit financing, they would have to wait for the next year's cycle.
Next year's cycle, okay.
Whether it's that delay is because
Is it
of us.
fiscal? Is it like according to fiscal year or what?
The 4 and 9%, one of them happens every March, the other one happens throughout the year.
Okay.
But whether that delay is because of us and our process, or it's simply because we met every deadline, but they just didn't win because it was a very competitive year, it would force us to wait another year and maybe get more creative about, maybe that's not this funding source, maybe it's something else.
Right.
And I think we're prepared for that, but we want that to be the reason why we didn't make it.
Right, and we also don't know, maybe we have another property or two, right, in the following year, I don't know, which would blow it all up again.
I don't think anybody has a great crystal ball at this point.
Thank you.
Aaron, did you have anything?
No, thanks.
Art?
All right, thanks. I want to first say that pushing the envelope, being aggressive with timelines is something I think we should be doing. If we try and we don't make it, well, at least we tried. So I applaud this. Let's make sure, pushing the envelope, but make sure that we get what we need. We don't just run roughshod, but I applaud taking a faster approach to many things. I want to just touch on the small area plan real quick. The downtown area plan really doesn't talk about this part of the property. I mean, it's a very small piece. It's a small portion of the Virginia Village area. It's really kind of the back corner of the downtown small area plan. So I would suggest we quickly just move it all into one, because you start talking about updating the downtown area plan, and that's going to open up all sorts of thoughts. And I have all sorts of thoughts about how I would like to change that one, but that's not in scope here. That's a whole different discussion. So I would suggest definitely let's just move the border and move forward. Avoid the confusion on that. The part that confuses me about this whole thing is we talk about Virginia Village, the overall property, all 20 properties and 81 units. And then we talk about the RFP, which is a subset. And we talk in terms of the whole thing and what we want to accomplish there, and some of it's private, some of it's public. And then we talk about getting feedback from the RFP so that we can decide what we want to include. And it gets confusing. And I think it's good to be kind of open on not dictating we want this, but I think we do need a little bit more direction. And if you bring up the calendar, the one you had, the slide you had with the different months, that one. I'm looking at that, and I applaud getting an advisory service. I'd say by the end of April, we should have some sort of a guidance of what are we thinking, and not a ton of detail, just very high level, where how many units are we envisioning in Virginia Village, the whole thing? How many bedrooms? Some basic affordability. What percentage of green space that we're envisioning, 20, 30% green space, whatever it is. I think we need to have some of those very high level guidelines moving into the RFP. And they can be vague. They can be very high level. I think we get that, and then we fine tune them with the reviews. But I think we need to be kind of setting that a little bit more, because I think where we are right now is if we ask anybody who's been involved in this project to this date what picture they have in their head, I think everybody has a different picture. And before we issue an RFP, I think we need to at least get get rid of half of the pictures. Just figure out a little bit closer to what we're picturing, and I'd like to see that. And that's really my big thing. A couple of little comments. The fact that we were talking in here about a phased redevelopment, I think that's actually going to help us a little bit with the relocation, because with phased, we can actually then move people from buildings before they're going to be developed into new buildings right then. However that phasing works, that'll help with the relocation. And then on this calendar also, it's unclear to me, I think you kind of touched on it with budget season, but I do think we need to know that there's going to be a council meeting, a council review before the RFP actually goes out. And it's unclear to me, are you talking about issuing it in June or what?
So we have a few dates already identified, April 20th, May 4th. I think those months are still in flux as we finalize the agenda, so we're going to work with the manager's office, the clerk's office, and kind of finalize what is the right time to have that conversation. But late April, early May is when I would imagine multiple visits and conversations to reconcile and provide feedback on what we've heard, greater clarity on what's going to go into the RFP, and then also what are the next steps. So we are on alignment.
So when are you targeting actually issuing the RFP?
The schedule right now has it happening in first half of May.
Oh, okay. Looking at this, it wasn't clear if that was the beginning of that arrow or the end.
Yeah, and we're looking at different ways of visualizing it. I think the attachment to this report and the one that I think was provided in January also has kind of a bulleted list of how we go season by season, month by month. So we're generally in line with what that scenario looked like, but just giving people a better sense of two processes will happen at the same time. One will conclude early summer, the other one will continue through the end of summer.
Yeah, we're issuing the RFP in May and we're still on the board and commission review. It's like, then we can't change what's in the RFP based on board and commission.
So
that's kind of
what we highlighted.
I know this is high level.
No, but we actually highlighted the answer to that in the presentation, where much of what needs to be in the RFP we'll know by the end of April. If any additional adjustments come up during the boards and commission review, the RFP issuance is going to leave itself an opportunity to issue an addendum, which is quite common in the RFP process. And I think we're going to have some placeholders and let folks know that if anything does come up from any of the commissions, we may have a chance to update the RFP and the guidance in there.
All right. That was pretty much it.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I have probably 2 or 3 comments. I think as you heard from a majority of us, whether you're old or young, we seem like we're in a hurry. So I think this is appropriately ambitious, given how long we've talked about needing to do something. We've been making these investments the past 5 years. But I do think it's actually a good balance of being ambitious but thoughtful and pretty transparent with how we're going to go about that. So I think that is actually striking good balance in both your staff report and the timeline, and being proactive with the communications. I think we all appreciate that. Along the lines of balance, I know we've spent, a fair number of us had questions about relocation. I think, Matt, you talked about this, is that while we are urgent and ambitious on the potential RFP and redevelopment process, any displacement is actually probably several years away. And so I don't want the community to be freaking out based on that, even though we are having the conversations early. So I think, again, finding that balance in the message is important, because even though we have a very aggressive schedule on how we may be issuing the RFP and going about it with the community, no one's getting displaced tomorrow, or not even next year, because we're only talking about LIHTC seeking this in the March 2027 timeframe, and then there's a whole site plan process, and then getting permits, like, you know how long that takes. So I want to make sure that people hear that loud and clear, as again, while we are being ambitious here, nothing is happening tomorrow. My main comment kind of goes along lines with what Justine started with. So I think around line 130, we've been talking a lot about like getting input from adjacent residents, making sure we hit both the condos, the townhomes, and the apartments of Winter Hill, what the neighborhood input is going to be, what our long-range goals are. I want to make sure, while that's obviously very important, we don't over-index on it. So at the end of the day, this also has to be financeable. So I don't want us to be so ambitious that says, we hear all this great input and here's all the things we want, and we can't actually finance the darn thing. because we have to be responsive to market conditions. And I think that's where, again, the RFP process will be important, but I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind. I think our comp plan and small area plans do talk about market conditions, but I do think that in the current environment, when interest rates are higher and LIHTC is probably more competitive than ever, that we also be realistic about what the market may want to build there too. So all that to say, nice job. I think you've heard from all of us that we appreciate all the proactive work and thoughtfulness on this. Yes, Jim.
Could I add one thing? In a lot of our documents, I think it's going to be important with the community outreach that we're a little bit clear on the definition of what this housing is going to be. It's kind of some of the comments that Aaron was making. You know, we talk about affordable living policy, affordable living spaces. We've talked about affordable dwelling units. I don't know if people in the public really understand what's that umbrella include. You know, we've talked about workforce housing, we've talked about public employee housing, we've talked about people with disabilities, limited incomes. I think we need to have a working definition that we use with people when they ask, well, who's going to live there? What kind of people are we trying to reach? We really need to have that, I think, to have these conversations to be really fruitful.
Can I have one other thing, Letty, just about the financing as you were speaking? Could our RFP, given that we just implemented or whatever we did with that CPAC loan program, what's it called, VPAC?
CPACE.
Not CPACE, CPACE, that we could incorporate aspects of that by saying, you know, and if your development has these qualities, right, you would be much more, you would potentially qualify for this more advantageous like loan rate that we have already adopted as a locality that you could qualify for, right? I mean, I know it drives up costs, but it's another way of thinking about financing.
I think at this stage, we've not ruled out any potential funding streams.
I actually had one final comment. Again, besides being like clear with the community on timelines and not like freaking people out, I also think it's important to manage expectations on what the small area plan updates are going to be in that March, April timeframe. I think Jack had a good point. I think you said these are not going to be total rewrites, right? Because people put a lot of time, albeit it was 13 years ago, I think, that we had touched these small area plans, but we were not planning on rehauling the whole thing. I've been thinking of it as a small area plan light, like reconciliation, is this still valid? Where do we want to tweak it? So that's another place that really is important to manage people's expectations on it. We're not trying to like ram through a whole rewrite.
Yeah, no, exactly, because I think the staff report said we're not going to do a big rewrite, right? And that was also one of Phil Duncan's first big projects when he got on council, so, you know.
Your legacy stands.
The downtown, let's just slice this off, together, and that's it.
So, okay. Any final comments or questions for staff? Okay, we look forward to the next update of this. Keep on going. Thank you. And we're only 8 minutes behind the adjusted schedule. Planning Commission, EDA, you're welcome to stay. We're going to talk about scooters next if you want to stay.
Sale isn't happening. I don't know.
Okay, so it looks like we've got takers who want to stick around and talk scooters with us. CACT members, please join us at the table. Thank you for coming. Okay, I think think we're ready.
I'll just give a very quick introduction to Mr. Kurt Lawrence, who's going to give the staff report. We are asking for council to discuss the micromobility pilot program and schedule action on a resolution to adopt this pilot program at your meeting on March 9th. If you deem it ready tonight, we're ready to go. And so Mr. Lawrence will take the staff report. I will note, we got a comment this morning from Councilmember Connolly about school input on the program. We didn't update the staff report with that input, but we will speak to it tonight. Mr. Lawrence, let me turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shields and council. I'm back for the first time to council since a month ago on February 2nd, where we had the first work session for this item. Since then, we've been to the ESC, the CACT, and had a meeting with some Meridian High School students. And now we're back tonight to go through any changes to the program, any questions that were left unanswered from the previous meeting. And we're looking forward to scheduling adoption or consideration on March 9th. So we'll go straight to staff report. Let's see, line 448 is where I'll begin. So I made a question response table for anything that was left unanswered from the last meeting. There were a few items where I had to either confirm it with operators or just do some more research. So it's not every single question that was asked and answered, but just rather the ones that didn't get a full answer at the meeting. And that includes questions from City Council, CACT, and ESC, as well as the question from the schools. So I won't go through all of them because there's quite a few, but I'm happy to speak more on any of them. I just wanted to highlight a few things and then turn it over for questions. So one of the biggest changes that I'm bringing tonight is that I'd like to change the minimum age of the program from 16 to 18 in this proposal. After speaking with scooter operators again, after coming to council in February, it seems that while it's legal for us to sort of say 16 is okay for people to ride scooters, the companies often require 18, so it would kind of be pointless for us to say 16. I think it would just make the most sense to be at 18, and that would match up well with Arlington and Fairfax County as well. So despite the benefits of having people as young as 16 being able to ride scooters, I think it just makes more sense to go to 18. Next up, there's a question about would the scooters be counted as capital equipment and subject to city property tax? I spoke with operators and they said that they do pay taxes in Arlington, and it sounded to me like it was the business tangible personal property tax. I'm waiting on confirmation of that, but that wouldn't affect any of our operations here. If there's any taxes that need to be applied will be applied, just like any other business or any other property. There's another question about allowing operators not based in the city to allow scooters to operate in the city as kind of like pass-through vehicles. For example, a scooter operator that's not permitted in Falls Church allows riders to come into the city, given that they remove the scooter at the end of the day. We looked into this and we talked with some scooter operators, and the conclusion for now is that with a pilot program, it really just doesn't make sense to include here because it's not something that we can easily enforce. I think with an ordinance, which could be a follow-up to this pilot program, something like that would be possible. But given the nature of the pilot program and how we kind of enforce things between ourselves and the operator, it doesn't quite fit as well for this stage. There's a halfway down that page, there's another question about creating temporary exclusion zones. So yes, we can designate no ride zones, no parking zones, and slow ride zones throughout the city, kind of as we desire. And so that actually relates to the comment we got from the schools earlier today that is not addressed in writing in the staff report, but we can address it tonight. I think the best option for us, well, first of all, we can certainly accommodate any request the schools have for no parking zone, no riding zone, or slow riding zone. I'd like to have some kind of meeting or more discussions with school staff just to make sure we get the best outcome possible for the school areas, the secondary school campus. I understand the concerns about scooters being, potentially left places or interfering with other daily activities. And the request was to kind of not allow scooters in the entire area. And while we can do that, I'd just like to have a conversation and just go through the nuances of options before we kind of settle down on anything. With that said, that isn't something that has to be in the MOU or in the staff report or anything like that. I'll certainly add it to the staff report for the March 9th meeting that we've discussed it. But at this stage, City Council is kind of just allowing us to set these geofencing zones for no riding, no parking. At this stage, we don't have to actually clarify where those are going to be. So that keeps in line with our idea of keeping this pilot program pretty lean and flexible. So as we go through the program and learn more and get feedback, we can kind of evolve within the restraints that we set out during this kind of approval process. Okay, and I think that's the main ones I wanted to touch on tonight. There's several other things in that section that are new, as well as throughout the staff report, so I'm happy to answer any more questions, and I'll turn it over to you all.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kurt. Before I open it up, I know you went to the CACT, but what was their general take? And then I'll just ask our CACT members if they have questions or comments as well.
So they had a few questions. It seemed like they were overall supportive of the program. I think a lot of that comes from it being a pilot, and they want to see us at least try to get more access to multimodal transportation in the city. And then we just had a good conversation with a lot of questions, a lot of interest, and I'd love to turn it over to you all and hear more.
I feel like my thunder has been thoroughly stolen because I feel exactly the same way. I thought that the CACT in our previous meeting was generally receptive to the pilot program. There were some safety concerns that I know that you highlighted in the document, but I just want to speak them here. One of them was, I think the biggest safety concern was about device users riding the scooters on Broad and Washington Street. I don't know if that's something that we can really control, where users choose to ride their scooters. There was also concerns regarding, again, users riding at high speeds on the sidewalks, along with devices being left on the sidewalks, potentially obstructing pedestrian movement. Speaking for myself, I think, again, the pilot program is sort of the perfect opportunity to address these concerns, right? Having a short 12-month timeline will give us the data to really see if those concerns are well-founded or maybe less well-founded.
Great. Bill, anything to add?
Was there any discussion about the WOND trail and how they're going to be utilized on that trail?
There were a few discussions in a couple of different ways. We talked about whether or not they're able to ride on the trail. They are allowed to ride per Nova Parks rules. And then there was a question about whether or not scooters can actually be parked on the trail. And so I reached out to Nova Parks to get their take on it. And they did reply that some clarifying questions, so I haven't had a final answer from them yet. But I did see that in Arlington County, they have sections of the WNOD that are designated as no parking zones, and then some that are sort of just open. So I would assume that we can designate it as a no parking zone from the city standpoint, but I'd like to get that confirmation from Nova Parks before kind of giving a final word on that.
Are there different types of scooters that you're considering? I know with bikes, you have the different horsepower for the motors. Is there any difference in the scooters, one more powerful than another?
So the scooters would all be the same sort of power output. There's a section in the staff report that references Virginia law, and that's kind of where the maximum power is and the definitions of what a scooter actually is. Okay. And that's sort of what we followed, and that kind of matches like the regional trend that we've been seeing.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Planning Commission, any thoughts?
I wasn't wasn't attending for this item, but I did read the staff report, and I thought it was great, the amount of information that you were able to gather, all these questions you were able to answer. I'm excited for us to kind of learn from the experiences of our neighboring jurisdictions on kind of what best practices are for approaching these programs, and their experiences, and it sounds like you've done a lot of due diligence in reaching out to them, so thank you for all those efforts. Because I haven't been completely plugged in all the way through on this, I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but what SMD per 1,000 people number are we targeting? I know Arlington has 8.6 SMDs per 1,000 people in their population. City of Alexandria is at 7.5. City of Fairfax is at double that, very high, 15.4. So it says TBD in the table. This is line 239. So I just don't know, have we decided yet what that number should be?
So that was sort of a reference point, looking around where, what other folks have in their jurisdictions. The goal was sort of to see if that made sense for us to have 100 scooters. 100 scooters was sort of a driving number for us because that was the minimum amount of scooters that seemed like it might be economically feasible for operators. So 100 scooters would be a little bit below 8 in the city. 120 scooters would be 8 scooters per 1,000 people. So we're kind of right, that 8 scooters per 1,000 people would be right in between Arlington County and City of Alexandria, which I think would be a good place to be just from looking around at Fairfax County and City of Fairfax. I just don't think their numbers kind of apply to us as closely as those other two do. So using 8 as kind of a reference point, and then starting with 100, and then there's provisions in the documents to move to 150 if there's a desire for that.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. And I would agree that being sort of right in between Arlington and Alexandria would be a nice, sweet spot. So yeah, looking forward to the pilot. I think we'll learn a lot.
Great,
in
thanks.
this first year.
Thank you. I'm going to start over here and go around. Art, do you have questions or comments?
I have a few comments. I appreciate the work that's been done. I think you really did a good job of answering the questions. Thank you for getting the information about the drinking, although, yeah, 43% sounds high, but it's of those who crashed and ended up in the emergency room. That may actually be low for that scenario. Although I am curious, and this, I don't expect you to actually have the answer to this, is are scooter riders subject to DUI laws? And I don't know, but I don't think it's something that we need to get answered in order to move forward on this. And then the other one I have is just thinking about the schools. Something to think about is we probably can differentiate between the front of the secondary campus buildings and the fields in the back. We can probably say, okay, you can't ride them among the fields and stuff on those paths that are back there, but maybe they can get them to school. Some other creative things we can do around Broad and Washington, just make those slow zones in general. But overall, I think this is a really good plan to move forward.
Great, thank you. So I can check on the DUI information, certainly. And then the schools point I would agree with as well. That's sort of what I alluded to earlier with checking with the schools and seeing if there's kind of a more nuanced plan they'd like to see rather than kind of just saying it's a no-go. Thanks.
I don't have much more to add. Thank you again for all the additional work on it. And yeah, I'm happy that we're doing it as a pilot so we can continue to get feedback and support the geofencing in certain places as appropriate. I think, on the schools issue, to the extent that we want riders to be over 18, I don't know that we want, I understand the school response and sort of having no-go zones or drop zones or whatever they're called if you're not trying to incentivize people who may be under 18 from then riding scooters if you don't necessarily want them on the scooters or the operators don't want them on the scooters. But recognizing that, our campuses are used for a lot of different reasons, just trying to kind of strike the appropriate balance without making scooters an attractive nuisance for people who shouldn't necessarily be on them with a lot of space to be riding them around. So those are the only things going through my mind as to that issue in particular, but thank you again.
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Flynn. I'm glad it's a pilot because I mentioned this not in our meeting with you, but it was in a different meeting. I mentioned that I have a friend who lives in Alexandria who she complains all the time, well, not all the time, but there's Lime scooters that are just strewn all over her neighborhood, and she said it's such an eyesore, and don't let them come to your city. And so I said, well, we actually are going to it's a pilot. But so I think my point is that, I read through it. So my point is the parking, and I did read through all of it, and I saw that, that you had some stats that said it's actually relatively small numbers. I liked having sort of you were talking about having considering economic development for the parking locations. I think that's really good. But, part of it for me is, we pride ourselves on keeping our city. We have flower baskets and public art and all that. So I just want to make sure all this hard work, doesn't go down, because of scooters laying all over the place. And I know that there are fines, and I understand like the apps that can kick off a user and that sort of thing. I don't want it to become a burden on our police and all that. So, it'll just be interesting to see. I'm glad it's a pilot, and maybe it'll all be fine and there'll be no issue. So it'll be interesting. But thank you for all of that. Reading the staff report definitely gave me a little bit of, assurances that it's not going to just be sort of like the Wild Wild West, that there are some standards in place for the parking piece of it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll certainly keep that in mind.
Thank
Here we
you.
go.
Any comments?
It is very thorough, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate how it has kept evolving even from 2019 to now and from the time you first showed it to us last month, so thank you. Regarding the schools, one of the questions someone asked was how do Arlington schools handle it? And it says that Arlington schools high schools have a slow ride through geofencing. What about our other schools? I mean, I guess we would consider them like parks, sort of. But on the weekends, there's lots of people at Oak Street Elementary playing in the playground. I guess that's something that could evolve.
We haven't outlined any specific slow ride zones, but if that's a point of interest, that's certainly something we can do.
Okay, that just popped into my head right now. I have no idea if anybody else cares about that one, but just those areas that are more public areas. As far as Fairfax County goes, well, West Falls Church Metro is currently a zone where you could ride scooters, right? The metro station?
Yes, I think bird scooters can be ridden there, yes.
Yeah. So that would be amazing once the whole thing is developed, that you'd be able to come from West Falls Church Metro, come on your scooter and go to Mason's Lobster. Amazing. One of the challenges I know that is happening up on the school campus, and probably those of you that have secondary school students it's just the crowding. I think that is the concern. The traffic in the morning, the traffic in the afternoon, the people walking their dogs on the school campus, the use of some of the school grounds as dog parks, those kind of things that because we built a high school right next to a development and we hadn't done that before, the impacts are new. And this is the first year really that there have been people living so close by. So the thought of adding scooters there too, it just adds to all the stuff that really hasn't properly been sorted through. And I know, like, you're there with kids a lot more often than I am, but that seems to be one of the big concerns of people in the community, parents especially, about just how much is going on the campus, pick up, drop off, dogs, other things. So this just might add either positively or negatively to that. But so I appreciate that you would talk to the school staff over there and just figure out what they think would work.
Great, thanks.
Justine?
Yeah, so actually on the school point, yeah, I think having some nuance to this is better than just saying absolutely no scooters, because as Erin mentioned, there are other people that do go to the high school, maybe for, the Black History sessions or whatever else. And so making sure that people can access the school on the scooters and not necessarily, I mean, I think one good way to think of it is that's one less person who drove. And so I know that we already have issues with parking at the schools, and so being able to have people who are actually going to the schools and need to get to that campus, and maybe it's a senior or whatever else, being able to get there easily and not necessarily take up a parking space is actually a big win. So I would hope that there would be some nuance rather than just saying, you know, absolutely no scooters around here. I did want to highlight a few things from the report. One thing, I was disappointed to see that that the scooter companies won't rent to anyone under 18. Because I do think this is a really great mode of transportation for people who are younger. But also, so we have that, and then also knowing that this is a trial period, we'll see how it goes. It would be nice if kids were able to use this, because I do think that this is a great way for teenagers and others to be able to get around, especially and not have to rely on a car, because if they can already drive a car at 16, but they can't be trusted with a scooter, then we have something really backwards with our with our priorities.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
Is there any look at if someone has a driver's license, or is it's just an age thing?
So it's just an age thing, I believe, but it is checked with a driver's license most commonly, or some other form of ID.
I suspect it's more about, you have to be 18 to sign a contract. And when you create an account on these apps,
Like
you're
signing
signing a
liability.
contract.
Yeah.
So they're avoiding all sorts of headaches by doing
Waiving
that.
liability.
Right.
Right.
Right. Plus, you have to be 25 to rent a car.
Right.
So,
Okay, sorry, just.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I did want to mention a few things. Yeah, so I guess the point on scooters being left outside of, places, this is sort of the point of a pilot. We can see where there are issues. And I do want to stress that if there are a ton of scooters left outside of a place, hopefully that means that there's somebody that didn't drive. And so then maybe what we can do is look into parking spaces or other places to make scooter zones for that area so that we can have a more orderly, non-sidewalk riddled, or not have them littered all over the sidewalk.
One parking space is probably like 30 scooters.
Yeah.
So it's 30 cars that aren't there.
Right, exactly. So my hope would be that that we can find some, we'll get all this data, and that's what's great about this pilot program. Other things that I really appreciate, I know that there's all these concerns about what happens to the sidewalk. As someone who bikes around the city, there are plenty of places where I do not feel safe being on the street. And so I have to use the sidewalk. And so, but I am very courteous. I'm going 3 miles an hour. Sometimes I dismount, whatever else. And so my hope would be that other people do the same. But we can't say that like every single person's going to be courteous. But what was nice that was mentioned in this report is that if there are complaints that are filed with us and they list the date and the time that somebody was being rude on a sidewalk or wherever else, we can actually track who that user was. And so there is some sort of accountability that we can have in this system, as long as we have that communication for people to report issues to us and note the date and time. So I think that, to me at least, should hopefully alleviate a lot of the issues, but also allow people to be able to be on sidewalks, which is absolutely necessary in a lot of streets in Falls Church. And that is all that I have. So thank you so much for putting this together. I'm really excited to see this come to fruition and see what actually happens and what data we collect, and review this as all the information comes in. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So to sum up, thank you for the very thorough report, Kurt. Really appreciate the work on it. I'll just weigh in briefly in the schools. I think I agree with the majority of the comments so far. Is I would not like to see it completely fenced off, because Aaron's point that there's, there are community uses nearby. We have a metro station there. We have clearly an economic development kind of activity happening nearby. So I think figuring out that balance will be important. And so obviously give deference to the school's opinion, but my preference is to not actually say you can't allow any of them to use on school property. And I think even for the rest of the remaining 5 schools in the city, they're all in neighborhoods. And so unless we're going to say you're not allowed to ride on Cherry Street because that's where Jesse Thackeray is, that just wouldn't make sense. You probably wouldn't allow them to be on the playground, but on the street outside or nearby Oak Street or any of our other schools, I think that would be fine. On the point about kind of courtesy, similar to how we rolled out or we were rolling out the yellow compost bins, I do think having an FAQ list would be really helpful because I imagine that all these questions are going to come up again. How are we going to do it on the sidewalk? What is it going to be allowed in the school? What the minimum age is? So it probably makes sense to start developing that FAQ now ahead of launching the pilot, so at least people feel reassured that we hear you, we're prepared, here are the things that we already know, and they don't have to read a very detailed staff report. I think people respond generally pretty well to FAQs. And then along those lines, I think I've said in the past, besides the absolute like black and white rules, I think it'd be nice to issue like, here's common courtesy things. Like, here's what you should do. You should probably dismount when you get on a sidewalk. You probably shouldn't run people over. You should probably let people know that you're approaching. You know, there's like just common sense things that I think would be a really probably fun social media campaign as well.
Great.
So we appreciate all the work and we look forward to maybe council being on some scooters as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Sorry, it looks like Bill has a final.
I'm not a scooter user, so I don't know the common courtesies. Is it similar to riding a bike where you're coming up behind somebody, you're supposed to ring a bell or something of that nature?
At least the scooters I've ridden, they do have little bells that you can ding to alert
And
people.
the general courtesies are pretty much the same. You know, yield to pedestrians. It's in a lot of ways the same as a bike.
So, great. Thank you. I think we're ready.
Great. Thank you all.
And we are ahead of the schedule.
Wow, what is happening? This is crazy.
Now we're going to use up all the time now on council priorities.
Strategic, where to be strategic.
Yeah.
I think it's probably going to be super short.
Sorry.
The next time it's going to be super short.
I don't know. I have the most comments on this one.
Do you want to stick around?
This is going to be good, Matt. I don't know. I have the most comments on this one. Planning Commission, you're welcome to still stay. We're talking about council priorities and work plan. If you want, no pressure.
Okay. Thank you, good job.
Because we're 20 minutes ahead of schedule right now, so. Why, Jenny?
All right, so I'll just say a few words of introduction. And so at your meeting a week ago, the council reviewed sort of the written records of your planning retreat that it took place on January 31st. And council asked if staff could put together a first draft of strategic priorities. And so we assembled the staff that actually attended the council retreat, and that included Matt, Cindy, Jenny, Andy, Sharam Fard, Dana Jones, Amanda, and Mary Catherine. And so we rolled up our sleeves, put sort of what our goal was, or our screen was, the notes from the retreat, what we all heard the council discuss at the retreat, and we also added in the things that we kind of hear on a regular basis from the city council, and that's what we tried to capture on this page. The organization and your strategic priorities 2 years ago, you started with some broad opening statements, and we took some of the concepts that were in your report from the retreat and turned them into an update on those broad opening statements. And then have the 5 areas. We added good governance per the discussion a week ago. Each section starts with an aspirational statement that sort of articulates an end state of where we're trying to get to in each of these areas. And intentionally it's drafted to put the city council sort of as the protagonist here. This is what the city council is going to do. In any municipality, there is a ton of things that are happening all the time. Many people doing many things. And through all that noise, this document is meant for the city council to send a loud and clear signal. Here's what, based on our leadership and community and all the input that we get from community, these are things that we want to make sure we make progress on. So with that introduction, we can either read through it, or let me just turn it now back over to the council, how you'd like to proceed through
I was
this.
going to propose, rather than everyone talking through all 5 buckets, maybe we start with one and then everyone give comments on those and then we move on to the next ones. At least it's a more coherent discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, overarching goals. There's 4 that staff has proposed to us. Do people have input on those?
You still have 5, right? I mean, it's 4 plus.
It's 4 bullets. on the overarching goals.
Oh,
The- yeah,
sorry,
the-
I thought you meant
the-
the overall bucket.
the kinda like preamble, like-
Yeah, okay, sorry.
I had one. So I think that, well, overall, I actually thought it was nice to be listened to. So I thought staff did a nice job hearing kind of our half-day retreat and everything we've been talking about. So I think I saw a lot of things that we've been talking about for years now. See, reflected, so that was great. One overarching goal that I think we've talked about, or at least I feel like I've talked about, is a really focus on outcomes and results and getting stuff done. And holding ourselves accountable to, did the policies achieve the outcomes we wanted, as opposed to, hey, we just passed a bunch of policies.
Well, and is that to, this is a conversation I've had with you before too, when we follow up on policies a year later. Is that?
Yes, and
Yeah,
that's reflected, I think, later on when we get to
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah.
But I think in general, that's a mindset that I think many of us have talked about, of wanting to make sure when we do things up here, like we're focused on
Right.
results. We want to deliver things for the community. We don't want to just talk about them endlessly. We
Right.
don't want to pass policies that actually don't meet the policy goals we thought we were going to meet, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, sorry, Art, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with you on that, and I think on specific issues, we could talk more about these things as they come up. I don't want us to sort of say, oh, let's look at the readout, and if we didn't accomplish something, that it necessarily means that we didn't do the ordinance correctly, as opposed to sometimes, did we, you know, take a top-down approach on something, and it wasn't a bottom-up community, sort of immediate need, even though there may be long-term benefits of what we did. And so I guess I would just say that I think that's correct as a general matter, but it's gonna be the specific items as to like what exactly we need to do given feedback or results we see. Because I wouldn't say, like, for example, I wouldn't say on accessory dwellings that if something comes back, you know, you may say, oh, we only saw one and we wanted 10. And I would say, well, the fact that we saw one may just show there isn't as high demand as we thought there was in the community, or it means that people may be doing them 5 years from now. We're giving people opportunities, and it didn't mean that it was a failed policy. It may have meant that there was a.
Well, see,
so like,
I would say like maybe that's when you bring the staff in and say, okay, why did we only have one ADU?
Yeah.
What are you hearing? Is it because it's just too expensive? Setbacks don't work, whatever, you know, like what, and so like, I think it's a good conversation to have, and then, you know, I don't know.
Well, one, it's the process and the conversation, right? To say, hey, we adopted this, we had a goal of delivering more diverse housing units, whether it's ADUs, cottages, townhomes, whatever it may be. Did we accomplish that goal? And it could be a number of reasons why, and we may choose to take action to address the whys, or we may choose not to. But I think that habit and that process of saying, hey, we set out a goal, did we get this done or not, is important, I think, thrust of this council that I hope is pervasive across all of our buckets.
I think delivering results is about focusing in on the customers and who they are, our constituents, the people who visit, the employees, the business community. I think that's an overarching goal of, we need to deliver for those communities. Some of these, you know, be open to new and innovative solutions, honestly, it's weak, because it's, okay, if there's one and we stumble over it, we'll be open to it. No, we need to proactively pursue these things. We need to be actively, you know, we need to pursue stuff. We need to be looking at how are we going to be responsive? Engage, okay, we're going to engage, but we want to embrace what they're saying. Really listen and.
Like an easier one would be transportation projects, right? Like, we want to stop talking about improving NTC, and we just want to deliver some projects.
We just want to do it.
Right.
And sometimes, in fact, this fourth bullet may be to the detriment of delivering, because we can engage so much.
And that's why I think there should be number 5.
And we know what it
That's the
is.
tension,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, you talk too much, number 4, and engage forever, and we're actually getting stuff done. So that's why I think there needs to be a number 5, that ultimately we're here because people depend on us to improve their lives and to make, you know, all the things in local government work better for them. We're not going to engage continuously and not do anything.
I actually think that should be number 1, that we deliver. It should be number 1.
Love opinions.
I would second that. I guess for that bullet point, though, I would like to have some sort of emphasis on data collection and like, using, like, informing our decision-making through data collection to actually deliver results.
Sounds good. So we don't need to wordsmith it up here, but I think everyone, we've talked enough about needing a fifth one around getting stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, and it does balance. I always say that it is a balance between data-driven decisions and community feedback, and and so I think that does give us, because we do talk about engaging the community, but not so much about data. So I think that's a good point.
Okay. Anything else on overarching goals? Planning Commission? Any of these are our priorities, but since you're here as our guest, we want to give you a chance to. You're good? Okay. Good governance.
So this is the one that I, thank you for whoever wrote this up. This was great, because I know obviously we added this one on the fly at our last meeting. But it's really important, so thanks to the staff for writing this. My only suggestion on this one is, so the first bullet, let's see where it is. So we the first bullet, and we talk a lot about engaging the public, listening to the public, meeting them where they are. My piece is always, how do we get information about council business out to people? And so, I think we do try to do a good job reading public comment that's written in, listening to people who come to our meetings and all that. Where I think that we need to do better is getting information out to the public about, what's in front of us, or even what's on the docket, what's coming up. So I would just say, I was just trying to fiddle around with the wording on that first bullet. And so you'll see public engagement, the council seeks broad and deep engagement with the community whenever important policies are being considered. And then I would like to add, and will work to inform the public about issues before the council. And then you could just add the last sentence, and then the city council is committed to meeting the public where they are. But I'd just like to add that those couple words in there, that we would work to inform the public about issues before the council, because I think that's an important piece, and we can do better on that. Thanks.
I like that.
As far as the strategy, I like that this is in there. I think this is important. And I think it builds on what we have been doing. That third bullet is super specific. Everything else is sort of public engagement, public input, and it reminds me of when we talked about big things, and then we're like, and flower baskets. Or make something broader about that, like consider ordinance changes, other ordinance that strengthen the city's ability to enforce shared responsibility, period. For example, clearing snow, raking leaves, whatever it is.
Improve core services.
Improve core services, yeah.
It's a core service.
But it doesn't have to be specific to snow.
So the concept is sort of shared responsibility, though? Is that the organizing principle about this bullet then?
I don't know if it's.
I don't know.
Like ordinance changes to like bring
issues.
Deliver services better.
Yeah, to deliver services better. So it could just be like, consider ordinance changes to better deliver services.
It's not just ordinances.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's fine.
Whatever we need to.
I don't know, this is getting a little vague.
Now you're too
Yeah,
broad.
now
What
it's
are we
too
signing up
broad.
for?
I don't know. Maybe it can just be taken out, and
We're going to discuss.
we're going to discuss it anyway.
It goes back to that continuous improvement, this mindset, this attitude of continuous
Well,
improvement
it
and
kind of-
always improving, that I think we
Yeah.
should have in there. The wordsmithing, I think.
Yeah,
can do
continuous.
that.
It
And
could
this is
also
a
fit
great
under
example.
customer service, the last bullet. Ongoing efforts to develop consistent and high standards for customer service. I mean, that's not really customer service.
PTSD after the snow event.
So,
I like what you just said, Art.
yeah. So the couple comments I have is, going back to bullet 4, is talking about core IT systems and what we're doing, but I would actually suggest embracing new technologies, new things, so that we embrace the community for that, so that, because some of it, if, you know, you put out an API and you have a feed of information, let other people take it and run with it and provide it. So there's an opportunity there for the community to actually deliver a lot of things, and we're the supporting element. The other thing that I'm not seeing on here, because a specific item we had was looking at the boards and commissions, a couple of things, there's a whole list of items there, and I'm not, that's a specific item, but I'm not sure which bullet it fits under, and I think it definitely fits somewhere under, under good governance, but I don't know where that fits
Yeah,
under the strategies.
On that one in particular, I was also going to suggest that I think we should capture boards and commissions here, not only in the, like, what are the boards and commissions, but on the public engagement piece and sort of thinking about better utilizing some of our boards and commissions as sort of, you know, ambassadors and bridges to the community across issues. And also doing a better job as a council. This comes off oftentimes in appointments about sort of having sort of a bridge in some way to get better feedback from our regional, like the people who we sit on regional boards and commissions, who often feel like they're just kind of, you know, appointed to something and that don't have kind of a regular mechanism to even report on what's happening or how kind of people within the city can be better, kind of taking advantage of different services that they know are available and that they're providing input on. And so I think I would like to just see, you know, not only our review of boards and commissions, but just constantly like evaluating how well we're doing in terms of kind of the effectiveness
Are
of,
they adding value?
of both, yeah, and the staff piece of things too, right? Like, is it just a burden for staff sometimes? Is it, you know, what is staff getting back? What is the point sort of the staff liaison relative to the board and commission? And so I think it is a place where we could, as a council, do a lot more work and be more active in sort of defining spaces for people.
They can also be a mechanism to understand what's going on in our neighbors, where I know the CACT, the new CACT, because there's 4 of them have changed, we're talking about reaching out to their equivalents in Arlington and Fairfax and getting together and learning from them.
So here's an idea. How about we take out snow ordinance, put it in transportation. I'm going to get back to it later because I think it relates to sidewalks and accessibility in general, which feels like a transportation thing. Snow removal is, or not doing snow removal has been hindering accessibility. That's the root of it, right? So we'll get to that one later. We'll add a board and commission, kind of along the lines of what we discussed in GovOps last week.
We discussed that in GovOps, and maybe to Aaron's point, we also add, you know, I don't want to try to figure out how to word it here, but I think it would be good to have maybe on an annual basis, sit down with staff and boards and, or maybe every other year to sort of like do a review on how things are working and that. So, you know, city staff time is valuable and, you know, are there ways we can streamline things, make it more of a, volunteers feel like they're actually doing something that's valuable and, you know, that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's a retreat topic, maybe every other year with staff, I don't know.
Specific to boards and commissions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm keeping a list.
You know, what the GovOps talked about, which to me is concrete and doable, is to read through the charters
Right.
and then update those charters. And that the words on the page are the way the council to think about each board and commission's purpose and how it functions. And I think it also allows us to have a conversation that's needed about what is the role of an advisory board and commission. Staff have a view of it that I think is oftentimes a little different than the city council's view. It would be good for us to get aligned on that.
That's one of those things is I've identified 4 different categories because you've got, you know, regulatory, and we don't need to get into it right here, but you've got regulatory boards, you've got advisory
different kinds.
commissions,
That's absolutely right.
you've got committees and task forces, and they're different.
I was just going through the categories here. I don't know what the stat, I remember that on previous work plan, we had talked about updating the website for the city, and I don't know where that stands right now. Is that in process? And is that something that we need to fit under one of these strategies to make sure that that comes to fruition?
So it is, it's a big project, it's underway right now, and that is kind of one of the things the GovOps has been briefed on, but we haven't brought it to, did we bring it to the full city council? I can't.
It's not been a while.
Not in a long time.
Yeah.
Before me.
I
I
think-
would say it falls under customer, well, that's why I'm like, technology is not just the core systems. You got technology, you got customer service there, you got public engagement.
Okay, if it fits under technology, I just wanted to make sure that like we don't orphan something with
It's
these
under all
categories.
three
But-
different elements.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just following up on what Justine said, Mary Catherine did present to GovOps last year on a lot of communications piece, but sorry if we're getting off track here, Mr. Shields, but it might be a good work session, because, a lot of things have changed since she's come in for the good, and so maybe it's time to do a work session with her to brief us on all these different things. I know there's been some internal staff movements too, moving someone over to her staff to help with like some more of the economic communication, economic development stuff, and
So under technology, what we're thinking mostly on this is this big body of work to update our enterprise resource planning system. And so we're planning to, Jenny's planning to, one of the things we want to talk about with council during budget is what our plans are for the coming year on that, and how we plan to resource that big effort. I think it's a good news story, but that's what we're planning during budget time. So that's what technology is kind of mostly about. Now, website, I think, is mostly about communication, except for see, click, fix.
Is that the new request tracker, see, click, fix?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Is it going to be better than the request tracker?
well, of course. that would
Yes.
be the goal.
It'll be
The
mobile
answer is
friendly.
yes.
You can only
Definitely
improve.
needs to be mobile
You can
friendly.
only improve from the request tracker. Okay. Sound,
It
So
has
my-
to be good, 'cause we want people to use it.
Yeah.
My
That's
2
why-
cents on the website topic is, and I think Wyatt's staff report, that kind of laid out that council priorities aren't meant to be capturing all the things we're doing, right? And to me, like, there's a lot of good work going on that. You're gonna see some of that come to fruition really soon, and if y'all really want to put it in there, we can put it in there, but I'm not sure,
I mean, it was on our
it
council
needs
priorities
to.
2 years ago. Sounds like that turned into a project that we got an update on in GovOps. It is well underway. We'd probably like to get briefed on it. The part that's not clear to me is, does the new website include a 311 or a request, fix, click, whatever system that is better than what we have?
And we'll talk
And that would be
about,
the new thing in there for
I
public
think we
input.
just take out the core IT systems part of it, just upgrades to systems. It covers the stuff you're talking about, but then it makes it broader. It's not just the core, it's all of it.
Okay, to sum up this one, sounds like we would like a bullet for board and commission discussion as scoped out in GovOps. How do we feel about moving snow ordinance out altogether or out into kind of a sidewalk bullet that I will talk to when we get to transportation?
Would like that continuous improvement, improve.
I like that continuous improvement,
the-
but, support staff in efforts of continuous improvement. Because that's a staff function, but if, like, for the website, reporting back to council on how it's going, but not actually, we're not doing the work of the website.
So the difference is like the website, we needed council to support additional resources.
Right.
And that's how it made it onto this plan, 'cause we knew that there's gonna be a hard thing for you to do. You don't tend to not like to add FTEs on sort of.
well, if we go, Taya, can you go, there is one more bullet under there. But, there, so the customer service, so that kind of, right, goes along with what we've been talking about? And continuous improvement and sort of along those same lines, we could change the
Well,
wording
the
a little
public
bit.
engagement, the public input kind of are two piece of, public responsiveness. They're kind of two parts of the same. I'd rather see those combined and then have a continuous improvement, continuously improve, city services. And then snow removal can be
Maybe
under
it's in
that.
the top. Maybe it's in the description at the top, Art. It already says, support the organization with resources and policies needed by staff to deliver responsive, resilient, and reliable services. You can toss continuous improvement in there somewhere. Then you got it.
That's fine. Okay, I think we've come up with plenty. Housing. Comments on the overarching vision statement and then the specific bullets. Okay, I will start. In the overarching statement, I don't think our main goal is just committed affordable housing. I think we've talked about diversity of housing supply, starter home stock. We've talked about supply in general. I think that's too narrow of a statement for housing. So I'd like to see that expanded.
There's also housing affordability, which I kind of view as different than affordable housing.
Yes, there's capital A and little a, to both of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I see this as like a 2-year plan. And so I know it's like, well, yeah, you don't want to put off doing things on these issues for 2 years, but at the same time, it's like, what are we taking up ordinance-wise, for example, or like, yes, we want starter home stock, or we're going to review some of these different ordinances already. And so in terms of like guiding staff work, we're taking on a lot with looking at Virginia Village, like figuring out how we would potentially finance an expanded CCAU program, revisiting ordinances that we've passed in 3 or 4 different areas, and how, you know, they are or aren't achieving certain outcomes, and whether we might want to update them in any way to better achieve, you know, goals. And so I hear you on the 198, 199 feels more limited than it should be, but it's also like, how does it relate with respect to the specific priorities that we're going to ask staff to spend time on over the next 2 years? And like, I would be for supporting, oh, look at the tax code and how you can, you know, help people in older homes make improvements without necessarily taxing them on the increased assessed value. Like, we've talked about that before, and I would be in favor of doing it. But I also see how the 198, 199 is like relating to the things in these strategies for the next 2 years in particular.
Other thoughts?
I would say that the 4th bullet point doesn't quite fit under the overarching language. And so, you know, if we're looking at and learning from recent land use policy decisions, so looking at cottage ordinances and other things like that, that's more about diversity of housing. And so, you know, if we were even just to stick to the 4 bullet points, I still think that the overarching thing, wording should be somewhat expanded so that it at least includes the 4 points that we have.
Okay, other thoughts?
I think the diversity of housing is important and maybe that's that 4th bullet point, plus
Yep.
that. When I look at the full range.
Okay. I agree. I mean, I suggested it.
Right, you're right. So the 4th bullet point,
Is about
that could be,
housing
say,
diversity.
diversity of housing. That could be your little subtitle there.
Which is why I think your overarching statement needs to be more
Right,
expansive than just
right.
committed affordable housing.
Right.
Okay?
Can it just say access to diversity of housing on the first line?
Improve access to housing in the city by preserving existing and building new affordable and diverse housing, or
Improve access to a diversity of housing in the city, period.
well, then there's the by part. The by is the,
I know, but get rid of the by, because then we have the by underneath. The strategies of the by.
city council seeks to improve access to affordable and diverse forms of housing in the city, period. And then your bullets are the bys.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, anything else on housing? Planning Commission? You're good. Okay. Okay, transportation.
This looked like a good list to me. There were a few, well,
I had a lot in this one, so.
well, there were a few things that I wanted to make sure that we had, there were like specific things that I want to make sure that like the categories, that we have categories for it.
Okay. Can we just start with the statement
Oh,
first?
sure.
People have comments on the overall statement. Ensure reliability and good condition of core infrastructure and supports database decision-making. It's a lot in that sentence. It's reliability, good condition, database, decision-making, safety improvements. So my comment on this is, I actually think we are not bold enough based on the transformation we've talked about. Like, that doesn't actually speak to multimodal at all, and kind of that evolution that we've been on to, talks about safety for all users of our city streets, but does not actually talk about like furthering our goals, actually make it easier to get around in those other modes of transportation. So I would like to see, I mean, I had an edit there.
Comfortable.
I had, city council seeks to transform the community to be truly multimodal for visitors and residents alike, so they can safely walk, bike, roll, take transit, and drive to meet their daily needs. And then the use data-driven decisions, blah, blah, blah part.
That sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
City council seeks to transform or continue to transform the community to be truly multimodal, where visitors and residents can safely walk, bike, roll, take transit, and drive to meet their daily needs. And then you can continue with the database, decision-making, and prioritizing safety improvements. But as it stands, it just seems very much status quo, and I don't think that's what we're trying to do with transportation.
Well, I think that's a pretty good statement, and then the other things, I think, are in the bullets, so maybe that's where they get addressed.
Well, the bullets are a little, I mean, where it gets odd here is you look at the way housing is done. So you have a bullet and a description of that bullet. And here it's a bullet title and then a couple of limited items that might be underneath it, actions. So I almost feel like we need to use the same model that's there for housing to say core infrastructure, what are we really talking about? Especially when you get down to parking, we're not looking to just amend the zoning code or support the police department. Parking, we want to look at how to make parking work better across the city. And we're not going to limit it to just zoning or anything like that. We could go beyond even parking regulations to figure out how to make parking easy to use, wayfinding, who knows what it is, but we want parking to be more accessible and open for all residents and visitors. I worry that just the way this whole section is set up, it's these tiny little items that kind of are the next step, but we haven't got the big descriptions on each of these.
Okay, other thoughts on, I guess we'll start with parking since we started talking about that one. That feels like, I'm glad that parking's a bullet. Did people have input on what Art said or?
Yeah, just quick input. Some of the things that I think have been mentioned is that we have parking oftentimes throughout the day. People just don't know where to go. And so so that gets to that point, which could be some sort of education or wayfinding or whatever else. It could also be, trying to encourage shared parking agreements. That might be through zoning where we don't necessarily require a building to have all the required parking on site, but it could be elsewhere. Anyway, so maybe, I'm not sure if that would be zoning or not, but there could be other things. Even, I think we've talked about smart parking technology. And so, yeah, there might be other things that we want to have as part of the parking discussion.
So Wyatt, I think we're saying it's too narrow. We think the parking one is broader than that.
So the difficulty I have with that is that everything Art said sounds aspirational. I have no program to back any of it up. No people to do it, no plan to do it. So that's a big gap. These limited things we can do, but they are less ambitious. But parking is, like kind of the main thrust that we see from a policy thing that the council would be involved in is reducing parking requirements in zoning so that there's fewer waivers that the planning commission grants right now as a matter of course for every project.
What about the smart city, like the next phase of smart city?
So there's a potential there, and that could be something, but what do we have there with VTTI?
Yeah, we do have funding. We are just about to start scoping now that the signals work has been progressing so well on what's that scope. Because we can research where our data gaps are, we can look at different technologies. What can we do with designating our public spaces with the technology and apps, so you know that Kaiser's Thursday through Sunday, City Hall this, down by CVS is that. So we've just preliminarily started that conversation with our internal working team. So it is something over the 2 years we could potentially move forward. I would say it's probably not the first part of the 2-year kind of work plan.
Well, I feel like we're taking little nibbles at parking, and the point is, we may not know what the answers are, but we need to take big bites at it. It's just constantly coming up, and little nibbles is not gonna get us to those overarching goals.
You're saying parking should be like the parking master plan?
I don't know if I'm gonna go that far. I don't know if, but I'd like, we don't have to have all the answers this instant. But, I mean, I look back at housing and, I mean, learn from recent land, or use new state authority, or where possible, provide the support. It's a little bit more vague. I almost feel like these bullets are the next step, where then we get into, okay, these are our strategies. Okay, what's the plan, what's the work plan? And some of these feel more like work plan items where, okay, we're gonna do this one in the first 6-9 months, this one, and that's where I think we should be aspirational. We should be bigger, even if we don't know exactly how we're gonna do it yet.
So could we add a bullet that explores kind of smart city technology to be more ambitious with our parking
Or
strategy?
explore other
Although,
options.
what Cindy said didn't resonate with me. I didn't know where we're going with it.
Like, we're done with signals, then can we shift our smart cities money and the tech work to
I mean, what
solving
would
downtown
be
parking?
exciting is sort of these, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I wouldn't say we're done with signals, right? Like, I mean, I think that's,
Well, when we're done with signals, I guess I should say.
I think we owe y'all to bring you back some suggestions on what we would do from a technology standpoint, and I don't think I have a timeline we can commit to y'all on that. We're not at that level, but if we added a bullet to bring that, suggestions on smart parking solutions or whatever, I think that's something we could work with.
We do have the money as part of the grant, it's just scoping it, defining it in the timeline, so it could be bring back the plan.
And all of these things require people to do it.
Yes,
And
and
the
so
same people that we would ask to do this are the same people that are
Yeah,
working
I-
on NTC projects and sidewalks and all of that stuff. And that's the struggle I think we have with an expansive kind of view of this, is I kind of echo what Wyatt said. I'm not sure what we would do and then even how we would do it.
Yes, I think on that point,
Staff did talk about adding smart city when we met to this, but we weren't quite there yet to deliver something to you. And I will also note, based on the legislation that's going through, we may have some state code and parking changes that you're gonna have to
that'll be like
address.
bullet one, right? That's like a zoning change of how much parking can we require in residential. But I guess I don't want to lose the point, Wyatt, that you said, I don't have resources for this, I can't staff for this, I don't have, it's not on the plan. And so I think that's the thing that we want to talk about. It sounds like council wants to take this up. And so,
Right, so that's interesting and like kind of brand new to me, like why? Who cares about parking, actually? Really, it is.
People in the
Really?
city.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But we have plenty, what
we
every
have
study
plenty.
always shows,
We
we
have
have
plenty.
tons of parking.
And that's the
And
issue.
it is not a concern.
But,
I
but
do
people
not hear
can't get
about
to it. That's the
Really?
concern.
The
People
fact
don't
that
know
the
where it
people don't
is.
know it, the fact that people don't understand how to use it, the fact that we seem to have this adequate piece, but the feedback we get from the customers is that we don't, there's a disconnect. So maybe that's a change in ordinances, maybe that's a change in zoning, maybe that's a change
I
in
go to our downtown
communication.
businesses every weekend. I never have a hard time finding a parking place. There's tons of parking.
Stratford.
But you know what? So many people have said to me,
Parking.
I haven't been to Tate yet. I'm not quite sure where to park. I
Okay,
haven't
well,
been
figure
here.
it out. It's
It's
not that
hard to
hard.
get to Solace because I know, but it's the,
But
is
so
it the
the
disconnected
danger
nature of it?
is We have had vague parking things in council strategic priorities that we've ignored. And I think we're trying to get away from that. I thought the thrust was modern zoning is, don't worry about parking. I thought that's where we were going, and I'm hearing a very different thing.
Yes, but I think it's both and. Like, we should have no parking requirements, but we should make it easy for people to navigate to where the existing public spaces are.
Well, we've got tons of signs up. You want more cluttered signs that are,
No, I'm being,
But parking minimums are about new development, new businesses. We're also talking about, okay, now we have the existing and supporting what we already have. How can we make that work better? And look at what we already have. Is it working right? How can we improve it? This is that continuous improvement.
well, that's a study, and
Maybe it
this
goes-
city's got, we're gonna have way too many studies.
Maybe it goes under economic
That's what
development.
I was just gonna say.
Maybe
that.
it's economic development, not
We
transportation.
could do that, but
you do what?
Would you,
try stuff, but
would you all be interested in talking about paid parking for the city's public spaces?
I would be very interested in at least examining that.
Well, usually before a city, and Tim Stevens is not here because he's a big advocate of it, before you decide to do paid street parking, is you have to show that your spaces are being used, when you actually need to encourage turnover, right? Usually there's a threshold of like, if the utilization is over this amount, that's when you move to paid parking, because that then shows that they're getting used and you want to make sure that there's turnover. I don't think we have that data yet. The feedback I hear from customers and businesses is people can't get to the parking. They don't know where it is. We know where the parking is because we know the city,
that is true.
right?
It's restricted parking.
Like,
that I
we
think
know
is
that there's
the
3 garages in the downtown.
bigger
Does everybody know?
So the example I use is I was driving in city of Fairfax on, I don't remember what road, but as I'm driving, there was a sign, the electronic said, public parking, this many spaces
How many
left.
spaces?
And, you know, and it had an arrow that way, so something like that.
That's smart cities.
Yeah.
Yes,
stuff.
and that's
But
what I think
even
we're talking about.
before that,
Okay.
Just we have the wayfinding standards, just more parking wayfinding signs.
And we have like
should
a
be-
parking work session, you know, like that's separate from the parking bullet to figure out what our parking goals and needs and like work should actually be.
I do feel like it falls under economic development, I do feel
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, well, I'm worried that that's gonna result in another study. And like, my whole budget mantra this year is
No more studies.
fewer studies, please.
No, it's going to tell the same thing. You have a couple of hot spots where you're short on parking, but you generally have enough parking in the city. Especially
Right
since
after
we've
you
added.
said we want you
yeah.
to deliver on things.
Yeah,
And
we
a
don't
study
need to
is not
study it
delivering.
more. I think we've gotten
Yeah.
enough input on this.
Right.
But I do think that I want you guys to push back on us and say, hey, if you make the scope too big, something else has to give in the work plan. Like, we're not just going to add stuff and say, well, just make it work quiet.
Well, that's why I'm so animated on trying to keep this one small, because I don't see anybody very interested in this topic.
I think you've heard
I mean,
four of us say we're very interested in
We
this.
were
topic.
I'm just really surprised by that.
We're hearing.
I think one gee whiz thing from VTTI with the, with signage that says
Here's the public
spaces,
parking.
that is awesome. Everyone loves that.
Yes.
If they could deliver that, that would be
We
fantastic.
could
But
do a
that's-
sign and an application, but we need to come back and flesh that out more.
I
mean,
really think it is limited to parking navigation, like help people
Staff
get
to
to the
do it.
spaces that we already have.
Yeah.
We go a long way. But
Consistency of signage, even within the parking, tell businesses, here's what we want the signs to look like if you're going to do. There's just these smaller things I think we can do, these smaller, low-tech things.
I don't want to lose sight of the zoning part, though. I do
Yeah,
think
because
that
that's gonna be
like
actually kind of hard.
a big.
well, the state may push things that would make it
Maybe
easy.
the state will deus ex machina make it, but to make it, we want to reduce parking requirements, and that's how we're going to have fewer waivers. And I think that's actually going to be a decent lift over the summer, because we need to get out of the waiver business as much as possible.
Great. Okay, we spent a lot of time, more than I intended, on parking. How about the one that precedes this, the safety one?
So I have a whole bunch of I have things that, I guess I just want to make sure that they have. I have things that I want to make sure that they have a category that we've discussed, but maybe it doesn't belong on the work plan. So things like the LPI and beg buttons and things like that. I don't know if that work is still ongoing. I guess I just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost in all of this. I do want to make sure that we can still push forward leading pedestrian indicators as we get our signals updated and other things like that.
Just glad someone else said LPI, not me.
But I mean, maybe that goes under safety. But anyway, I just want to make sure that that doesn't fall off as something that council cares about and we would like to see in the next few years. Other things that we talked about, well, okay, I guess if we're just going category by category, I think that's the only thing I have for that might fall into this category.
I had that one, those things under, safety. But a bullet that, I think one theme we've talked about is trying more solutions out, testing more things, getting quicker things out there, LPIs. Theoretically, once our signals are upgraded, we can have more LPIs at every intersection. That's not new infrastructure that we need. If we find that that's an intersection that has lots of crashes, maybe we should implement LPIs at that intersection, right? So that feels like a bullet under either as using crash data to drive street safety project decisions, examples being LPIs, no right on red, that sort of thing. Is that fine with you, Justine? If we,
Yeah,
that's an example of street safety project decisions.
Is that council work or staff work, though? Or both?
It's, here's kind of what we're begging council on transportation, is helping us get things done. And that means protecting us from every request that comes in.
So that's number 2.
Yeah.
That's number 2, to refine the NTC program so that there's
Well,
less.
maybe not even actively protecting us, but not sort of jumping in when we get the emails of, hey, can we do this? Can we try this? That is anti-productive. It slows us down on delivering projects because the person who's supposed to be pushing something forward is now distracted on something that we're actually not going to do. And changing anything in the right of way is a thoughtful and serious thing to do. We're not gonna throw any random thing into the street. We're just never gonna do that. There's no engineer that we'll ever hire that's gonna do that. It's always gonna be slow and it's always gonna be deliberative, but we can have throughput if we're not running around kind of being so reactive. And so that's kind of what that body of data decision making, if we can go and really commit to that, what it also means is when we get the emails of saying, be patient with us on this. We're focused on this area where we've had, the data tells us we've had more serious incidences, and that's where we're trying to address right now. We can't get to your concern right now.
I think if people understand the priorities, and this goes back to earlier communication, if they know that, oh, here's a bunch of stuff that the city's working on, oh, where am I on the list? Oh, my thing is not the same as up there. I understand why they're doing that one, if it's just out there. One thing on the NTC program bullet, I actually would move that under public outreach. I would call it public engagement. And the issue I have here is it's a little too focused. I'm seeing the NTC program, something that can update it so it can deliver more with less effort. Kind of give us both. The less effort is obviously very important because some of that, to me, the NTC program actually one of the challenges with it is that when somebody submits something into it, it's immediately gone into this very heavy, staff-heavy queue. And some of the stuff that comes in, somebody just looks at it and hands it off to Amanda, and she goes and does a quick, light solution. Boom, we've delivered something without all that staff work and staff effort. And her team can look at it and go, oh, this is where that fits. It makes more sense. Oh, wait a minute, this is gonna be speed bumps. Okay, we can limit that. That'll be the bigger piece, but you kind of cream skim off some of these things for quick.
I'm suggesting to you that does not exist. And that was something that I articulated as something we wanted to be able to do like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. You go in there, you have an engineer's like, let's do something real quick and real easy. That doesn't exist in the City of Falls Church. What we do quick and easy pisses off more people than emailed you in the first time. And so if you're trying to please people, it's not doing that. And so staff get whipsawed around. There isn't a single communication we can have with residents of City of Falls Church on anything having to do with their street without massive exchange. That is the world we live in. We need less of that. And
But
so
it's
the
still
hard
moving to
news is,
public
the
engagement.
hard news is speaking truth. Folks, we're not doing anything on your street. And we'll say it in a gentle way, but the street meets all design standards. There's no project planned. We're not gonna do anything about it.
And I think the corollary to that is here are the projects we are doing that is based on crash data and safety data that we
That's
have,
right.
right?
We are
Like, it's not
focused on-
like we're working on these projects.
Right.
I'm gonna pick on Annandale and Gundry, right? That's one we're hearing lots of input on. The CACT has written us another letter about it. Clearly we don't want anybody hit in that intersection before we do more with it, but we've already done 2-3 rounds of improvement to that intersection. And so can we actually say, here's the bar that we need to see before we go back and do more?
I think
And
that
it has
would be
not
very
risen to
helpful.
that bar, right? I think
Yeah.
the feedback we've heard is people want to see measurement of stop sign running or speeds or whatever. And I'm guessing that it's not going to be any worse than other stop sign running that we see across the city. But I think we can't say that without backing up saying, here's where we are doing work, and here's where it needs to rise to this level before we will go back and touch your street a fourth time. And we can defend it.
I think that would be what we need to be able to deliver, to be able to say, this is what we are doing. It's positive, it's gonna be effective. And that's part of the story why we can't jump to address what you're raising.
And what you're saying is, I still think that NTC bullet probably does need to move down to public engagement and outreach, whatever we want to call it.
I didn't
Just-
want to lose the quick
I was
solutions
gonna
idea
say-
though. Like, you can still use data. Let's say we say that this is where we see lots of crashes happening.
Yeah.
Or near misses.
Right.
Instead of engineering to death for 2 years, why can't we figure out, hey, a near-term solution is some flexi posts to narrow down the street and tighten up the curbs to reduce the crashes that we're seeing? Like, that is a quick solution that is data-based.
Data-driven.
Data-driven, quick solution.
I think that could be our commitment.
Yeah, so I don't think we want to say we're throwing out all quick solutions. I think all we're saying is we want to see quicker things anchored in data, not necessarily anchored in lots of complaints.
Well, and the great thing about the rapid solutions is that they can be temporary. If
Can be reversed.
I don't know, if it's like really horrific and we see more crashes afterwards, then we can remove them. But I do think being able to do things quickly and not having to get bogged down in like year-long processes of like going back and forth with every single person would be a good thing to do.
And that's where, like, LPIs and no turn on red comes from, right? Those are quicker things that we should be able to turn on. If we find there's a lot of pedestrian and car crashes here, I'll pick on like Virginia and Broad, I think has an LPI. Maybe we need to lengthen the time there because we see more interactions. That is a quicker solution than trying to do a bunch of improvements on Broad Street.
Also, it's at a certain, some of these are at certain times of day, and some of the quick solutions could be, oh, they're seeing this. Let's go stick one of the speed sign trailers right there and see what it really is, real quick, boom. That's not doing something we don't do. It's just, oh, we didn't know that there could be a problem there, let's park our trailer there.
I did want to follow up though on the communications part, which is, having that list of like, here's our priorities and here's what we're doing and this is what we're moving forward with, and we're not going to derail these projects just to be able to move forward. And so I don't know if that goes under.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
I don't know if that goes under public outreach but I didn't see anything here like about that communication, about how, like, this is the list of our sidewalks, this is the list of our streets that we're doing, this is the priority, this is the criteria, and, your street will be done in 2050, given the budget that we have. Just some sort of like clear communication part of that. And so I don't, like, that might go under safety because that's part of the NTC program, but it might be under public outreach.
I mean, I think we'll take back the priority list kind of point. We've been trying to work on that, right? The cadence of one thing a month is something the team is working towards. I mean, I'll just reiterate the point that the system is overwhelmed, right? Even the conversation about like data collection and all this stuff is more staff time being spent on things. And when we talk about these things individually, they all make a ton of sense and they're all individually doable. We have a really small group of people that's trying to do all of this stuff. And I think my sense is like we've shotgunned so many things at them, they don't even know what direction to go, right? And that's what's inhibited our ability to get some things done. And so we've got some more work to do on our side, to get more organized and prioritized. But I just caution kind of the more and more stuff here is part of our challenge.
Taya, can you back up to the overarching statement?
That's one that I had edits for.
Yeah. I just wonder if I could say something in there about, I mean, what council can do is put more money, help, so we can hire more people. We can do some policy things, but is there a way to just talk about staff capacity?
Well, I think that articulation of transforming the city, that's that aspirational thing, that's the clear signal that galvanizes resources and kind of organization so that we're accelerating in that direction.
So on that point, my specific bullet feedback is if that is going to be our overarching statement, that we are transforming the city, everything below it feels like a keep it going, just like maintain, like state of good repair. Like we don't talk anywhere about like, and maybe we don't need to because we are prioritizing the secondary bike route, for example. That's a new thing that's going to be resource intensive to go ahead with, right? Does that need to show up on that list?
I think it's the micro-mobility bullet that's a little too narrow. We're really talking about mobility, multiple forms of mobility. And the new bike route could be part of that. Even just coming back to say, all right, we increased the frequency of the F-20 over the summer. We don't know what the effect is. Monitoring how well that's working. We've got the efforts to put in more bike shelters. All of this is already planned. I guess micromobility seems a little narrow. It's more mobility of all forms or just something like that.
Anyway, I just wanted to reconcile that if the vision statement is going to be bolder and more forward-looking, that the bullets underneath it very much felt like.
Well, maybe, the CIP is $100 million for transportation. I mean, so Meridian High School was a big deal for us. Our transportation program over, the 10-year period is much bigger than the high school. And so it is transformative. Yeah. I don't think there's a gap between that aspiration of transformation and the amount of money that we're putting towards that goal. I think, so maybe we ought to reference that. But there's not, that's mostly already been decided, and you're sort of tweaking it each year with the CIP, approving new grants that are already aligned with that. But is the big transformation. I do think if we could have a different mindset on reactivity to residents, that would be transformative as well. And so that's, if we could sort of take that and sort of figure out how the council provides leadership that's aligned with what we can do on
I
this.
think that becomes a lot easier when we have the clear criteria and we can just point to this is the process and this is how we're doing things and this is when your street would be addressed next. Like having some sort of clear something, because otherwise we're getting complaints. I feel a lot of sympathy because, you know, it's awful to live on a street where like you feel like your kids are in danger. And so, but to be able to point to something, I think would be really important for us to have as a tool. So like, it's almost like if you can help us help you, anyway, so it's,
I think that's the commitment that I think we have to do. We have to sort of figure this out together.
I think the
with what
word
you need.
refine is kind of the issue. Refine the NTC program. I think rethink it to be more of what you're talking about. Refine kind of is like, okay, we're going to tweak what we have. I know it's a huge staff lift on the current process, so let's rethink it and figure out something that reduces that. You know, what could cut the staff work from that by 50%? You know,
Well, I think the simple
Refine's
idea
not going
that
to do
we have
that.
for that is
Rethink will.
is that we're only going to entertain 2 petitions a year. Boom, done. That frees up, I think, a decent amount. Now, maybe we could circle back and make sure we kind of have the right idea on that. But what that signifies is that there is still an outlet for grassroots requests, but it's limited. And the main thrust is policy-driven.
Data-driven, like tops-down safety projects.
That's right.
Yeah, I think
It's still weird though. Like if you're like, oh, we're only gonna do 2, it's like, all right, well, why those 2? Or why are they so important to the
First
things
in.
that you're identifying? Like it's
So-
just,
so
I
you-
don't,
And
So
then there's
each
all
of
the
the
staff work to
projects
get
does
the
come in and
data.
get evaluated and scored,
yeah.
right? And we end up working on the low priority ones the same amount of time we spend on the higher risk, lower risk, higher risk ones. And so,
why? Why are we doing the low priority ones at all? Like, couldn't we just
I
say?
think it's because of all
Really
caps
aren't.
emails.
But couldn't we just say we're not, I mean, I guess that's what you're telling us, is that like, we just shouldn't be doing the low priority ones.
Yeah,
Yes.
like Poplar, the one that came in on Poplar, we should have said, we're not gonna study that.
Right.
We
no
can tell without even studying it, there's no traffic calming that's needed on Poplar.
Right, that's a dead
And-
end street.
And that's kind of not the signal we got. It was like, these people are upset, do something about it. That's what we felt.
Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, maybe if there, and forgive me if I'm wrong or if this already exists, but, you know, I always say, if there's a bus stop, if it's a street with no sidewalks, you know, like that sort of, like, so Noland, which is adjacent to my street, did get speed humps last year, but it also has a bus stop and there's no sidewalks, you know, and it's a big cut through street.
Yeah. So that one
Poplar is a dead end street. Like, so I feel like if there's some sort of like criteria, like these things jump you up, you
Yeah.
know,
I
to the
think
front
that
of the
one,
line.
That makes sense.
the staff did come back and say nothing was needed, and yeah, I think the CICT said, no, let's take a look. But then, once they were like, no, we want all the became a whole thing, continuation, and I will tell you the CICT's perspective was, what in the program allows us to kill this? Because we
So
were
you-
actually,
CICT
the
wanted to sort of
CICT was
nip it.
actually completely supporting staff at that point, and yeah, it was dragging on. We're just like,
Sounds like we need the CCT to be aligned with us on this as well, that if there are low priority things that come in, we will back you up and say, no, we're not gonna spend resources on them. And I guess the request we've been making is to us, to defend the don't be reactive, we want to be able to say, here are the projects that we are doing based on data. Some of them will be quick, some of them will be long, but we are informed, those are informed by actual crash or safety data and not, you know, we'll save some capacity for bottoms-up requests, but I think in order for us to have that conversation, we need to feel better informed about what those things
that
are.
gets into
Understood.
the DPW's list, so, because some of these can be, you know what, it's not a big deal, we're gonna hand it off to DPW, and they will get to it when it makes sense.
And likewise, I guess I'll make the same request for sidewalks. I really would like to stop receiving requests for sidewalks at Whittier. And so if we can just show them your number 50 on the list, because here's 1 through 49 that are prioritized or higher priority than yours, right? Then we can have that easier conversation with Whittier. Because that's the other request that we often get is, why can't we get a sidewalk here? Well, you're number 35, because here's all the other ones that are higher priority.
One list.
Okay, I think we've spent a long time. I wish the CAC.
Can you know what the other thing is? Just, there's a crosswalk there between what we're talking about with transportation and what was in the previous priorities of customer service, of communication, of public engagement. There's the two are connected. And how we're dealing with the public and how council is protecting staff, working with staff together in dealing with the people who live here and giving them the right answers that reflect what we know staff can do.
I would also just generally like to mention, I guess, are we moving on from transportation? Because we decided to move snow discussion to this, and so I'd just like to make sure that we take snow and bring it here, if that's,
I was gonna make it like a general, like, accessibility, like sub bucket under there. Snow removal's one of them. I think we are currently funding 200,000 in sidewalks every year. Is that roughly?
Yes.
I wasn't sure we were moving it, or we were doing, in good governance, we were doing the improved city
We could
services.
toss it all together.
And it's just something that was under there.
What do you all prefer?
Not sure which way we ended up.
Include it as an accessibility bullet under transportation, throw it out altogether, leave it back in good governance?
I think accessibility may be a good thing to include, because that is one of the things that we
We have pushed
forget,
on.
that we have pushed on, and it just gets forgotten on a regular basis. And if it's there, it's something that we're really gonna,
Where accessibility and availability is under core infrastructure.
yeah. And as Cindy mentioned, like, the websites have a actual mandate that they have to be accessible, but beyond that, there's transportation accessibility and other things that need a higher focus.
So we're moving snow under here under a new sub-bullet for accessibility. Okay.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I probably need to leave at 10:30 tonight, so I just want to put that out there. And I don't know if Ms. Underhill also needs to go, so I don't know if we want to try to work through the next two, or we want to, make progress on these three and then say, put two over, or, yeah.
Are we, anything else in transportation? Are we ready to move to economic development? Because that's our last one, isn't it?
We have two
Oh,
more.
environment, okay. That one's an easier one, I feel like. That one looked good. Okay, how about economic development? So this is a new, pretty bold statement for economic development. I don't think we've ever put it out there that way, other than me saying it, but.
I even like the exclamation point. Yeah.
There's never been an exclamation point.
This is what.
An
this is what I would-
underline, there's also an underline too.
So that's a pretty big shift as our economic development strategies from where we've been, right?
Yeah.
The only problem I have with it is, yes, this is great we want to be the best place for independent, locally owned, but what about non-independent, locally owned? Because we also want to be welcoming if they're not locally owned, or we still want.
And I don't think it says we're not going to be, but our focus may be as a differentiator. So I like it as a kind of shift from where we've been. The forsake of what for economic development is always, for the past 10 years, the forsake of what for us has been to diversify our tax base. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. I'm not suggesting we change lines 262, but I feel like I want to make sure we don't swing it so far that we lose sight of, like, at the end of the day, this was for the sake of diversifying our demographics and our tax base. Any other comments?
No, but I think you're right though, Mayor, because that's always one of the things we always talk about, supporting local businesses. And I always remind people, well, it's not just supporting local businesses, it's also because that tax revenue comes back to us to support our schools and our city. So I think, that is your point there. So maybe just adding some language in there. It says it helps us, support our city government and services, and I don't know.
I know the EDA's left, but input I've gotten from them in the past is, I think building off of bullet 1 is really around like relationship building with our business community. So yes, we're going to develop strategies in partnership with them, but I think a big part of that is actually having relationships with our small business. So if we could tweak that bullet. And then an edit to bullet 3 on city regs to make it not just code amendments that are small business friendly, but I know a more competitive tax environment. Whether that's keeping our property tax rate competitive, whether it's B-poll, whether it's permit fees, there's probably a whole host of fees where we seek to not only be competitive, but also attractive to business. So expanding, it's not just code amendments, but our tax structure, I think, too.
Sorry. 262 to 264, I mean, I know that it's business sort of focused, but should it include, that it's the best place in the national capital region to visit, right? And for independent and locally owned businesses to grow, thrive, and succeed? Like, I thought part of the EDA strategy is like, what is the interrelationship between our businesses, so that when people are coming here, they're doing more than going to a single restaurant. Like, they can make an afternoon of it or a day of it, right? And so thinking about like, what is the experience for a person and why do they come here, and how does that kind of help in all aspects of business attraction, retention and expansion?
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of captured a little bit in number 2 as a regional destination.
Yeah, the promotion, I think we need to be more than just marketing. The fact that we're doing the scooters makes it easier for people to come here. Parking makes it easier for people to come here. Promoting transit, all these things.
I think it's like
more than
marketing,
just marketing.
placemaking, like stuff that makes it a cool place to come and then hang out and stay, and make it easy to get around, make it easy for people to find a parking space.
Yeah.
So maybe it's marketing, comma, placemaking, comma, something.
I don't know, but it needs to be all those things.
Well, there is an intent, like each bullet is sort of a thing. And when it becomes a lot of things, it becomes a bit more vague. Because placemaking is a whole body of work that I think is different.
Yeah, my point more was just because the promoting this as a regional destination is a piece of it, that the overall strategy should include the visiting and not simply the business aspect of it.
And some of it is, these are strategies.
Right.
So the next level down is, okay, what are we going to do? And individual items like new wayfinding for parking, that doesn't have to be specific to just one strategy. It can be, okay, we're going to do this thing, and it's going to support this strategy, this strategy, this strategy. And so some of it could be a little bit broader, but with one thing to work on.
So, trying to think through like what we're
Destination
really
promotion.
going to be doing on these things. We're definitely going to be trying to do marketing in new and different ways. We're definitely doing that. The placemaking piece, transportation projects are a way of every one of them. We want them to be beautiful and attractive places, but we don't really have a big placemaking agenda right now. Unless the council says, stop everything, we need to do that. But we don't have a plan on that.
We did that. We've done that.
done-
We've done the placemaking. Now we need to do the,
Product development, now we're in sales.
right, exactly.
Always improving.
We've talked about placemaking for a long, long time, and now the place is here and we need to support the place as it is. So maybe that's part of it, that it's,
It's also grasping opportunities, because
I mean,
things may
yeah.
happen. There may be, all of a sudden, somebody's looking for a small premiere of a movie, and they don't want a giant place. Well, we got a nice new movie theater, and we've got a couple of really good restaurants for them to feed them at, opportunities. That's not really marketing, but that's taking an opportunity of.
So I think our intent with the first bullet was, there's like a universe of lots of things, I think, in the economic
help
development
sharpen that
space that
up.
we could do. And, I think is why I was saying some of those things we are focusing on now. I think we are working on the relationship piece with kind of our business community. We're making a push on marketing. We're going to be trying, and you'll be seeing new things from that in the spring. The first bullet's made to like, okay, out of the million other ideas, how do we get together with all of the stakeholders and decide on what those priorities ought to be that we're going to work on, right?
And when we are before you to talk about the CPED's budget, we're going to present a reorganization of CPED's that we're still kind of working with staff through, and Andy's got ways that he thinks we can support some of the strategy development in ways that kind of we don't, and to bring additional resources from reassigning staff to support EDO in developing some strategies. And EDO would be kind of more focused on that direct business relationship building. So we'll have a bit more to say about that, but that's what that's related to. Because, and it, maybe just the last thought, it's respectful of the fact that this is a shift, as the mayor said at the beginning of this thing. And so with the shift, let's take a bit of a beat here to say, what does this shift really mean? And what are we going to back it up with? What are the strategies we're going to identify?
Yeah.
So we think we do need to spend some time on that.
Yeah, I think the feedback you're getting is under line 270, identify and develop new ways. We want to know what those new ways are, because we're starting to throw those ideas out at you, right? We're saying placemaking, events,
Right.
whatever it may be, beautification.
Could be in there, in that strategic planning effort that we would like to engage in.
I also view this is a 2-year strategic priorities.
Yeah.
We don't have to know all the things that we're going to do to support them in the next 2 years.
That's right.
That's ridiculous to think we will. So, we don't have to know.
But what you would be committing to is saying, we want to develop some new strategies that we've not had in the past.
Yes.
That's the statement.
Yeah, 270, the new ways. We're hungry for the new ways.
Yeah.
Whatever those are. Okay, anything else on
and
this
then
one?
I just think the other piece is that we need to support, we've drawn businesses here, and we need to support the existing businesses while continuing to draw new. And again, it's a shift in the priority. We're going to be the best, but we're also going to support these people that have already opened here. They're here.
Okay, anything else on this one?
On the whole section?
On the
or
whole
just the-
section of economic development?
Yeah, so, I feel like the last bullet, the Gordon Road Triangle, is specific compared, like, everything else is more broad, and that's pretty specific. And I'm not sure if I even, I'm sorry? Did you say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't know, like. do we
I
need
just
to
meant
add-
it's specific
Yeah.
because it's gigantic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I guess my, I know we've had a conversation about Gordon Road, but I don't know if we've ever had a conversation we had that one work session or whatever it was. But frankly, I don't know. I don't know where I am with this I think I heard 30 million more, I just don't know. As a council person, if I'm ready to say, we're going to get public support for taking on that kind of debt for a property that no one ever really pays attention. I guess my piece is like, I feel really comfortable saying Public Works needs help, that facility needs, I don't know. We've never, I don't know if this is, if we're ready to have that in there. I feel like we still have to have another discussion. I don't know. That's just my
Maybe
Well,
it's just
I
to
think you
explore
might
the
have-
Future of this
Right.
important.
yeah.
And remember, the Gordon Road Triangle is 20 acres. The city is one constituent
Yeah,
part
no,
of
I
it.
know, yeah.
And so the thought is, I think it's quite possible that we are going to have a major land use case in the Gordon Road Triangle. And I think when that happens, it would be helpful if we've been engaged with that property owner so that that case can be developed with a broader vision for the full 20 acres. And we're trying to get ahead of that so that we're not being reactive when, boom, an application plops on our desk.
Okay.
I think that's
Yeah.
kind of where we are on that one. And so maybe it doesn't,
Or maybe just make it a little bit more
We'll explore it.
broad, or, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
It doesn't say we're taking out debt in the next 2 years to build the property.
No, that's
it's
true.
very,
That's true.
this bullet is very business oriented, to engage with business property owners to seek a shared vision for the future.
It's just
of
strange to
the
me because
business district.
the majority of this whole document is pretty broad, and we don't really call out any specific projects.
You're concerned that you're like, people are gonna read this and say, oh, council's looking to redevelop
Yeah.
Gordon Road,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that it's the balance of, we need to be proactive in planning for a space that is important and that may see activity without saying like, oh, we're looking for everything to rise out of the ground with cranes like in the next 2
Right,
years.
Well, that's why I say the word seek feels very much we're gonna find it versus we're just gonna explore it. We may end up doing it, we're gonna explore it, we're gonna be open to it.
To change the verb, to explore,
Yeah,
would that
just a
feel
little
more?
bit of wording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that,
I mean, I guess,
is that
yeah, I
okay
guess
with
that's.
people, or would you like it, rather have it taken out?
No, I
It
think-
doesn't matter to me. I just was like sort of taken aback because I felt like, oh, this makes it look like, to your point, like we're charging forward. I feel like I was not there mentally yet with this project, so.
I think you're right, we're gonna, if we don't do something, our hand's gonna get forced, so we might as well be on top of it. Well, the third bullet, though, I would say just a little bit narrow, what you've got there, regulations versus policies and regulations, and just make it a little broader on, identify areas where we can make things that more small business friendly. Because it doesn't just need to be code amendments, it could be everything.
Yes, I suggest
Oh,
we expand
sorry,
it to
missed
be
that
like
one.
competitive tax, you know,
Whatever it is.
and permit fees and, you know, sign ordinances or parking requirements, like whatever it would make it more, again, competitive business environment. Okay. Anything else on economic development? We can move on to environment.
My suggestion on environment is just line 300. Instead of just monitoring ongoing implementation, I think it needs to be drive ongoing implementation or accelerate or,
Promote.
yeah, just implement. How about implement?
All the verbs out.
Yeah. I think we've had slow going and we've had lots of conversations about what we actually have to do to meet these goals, so we need a little kickstart there.
I think the opening is nice. It encapsulated everything.
And Mary Beth, strike through the annual report.
We'll have to change the verb at the beginning instead of monitor.
Yeah, just say implement.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
not
since
really
we're
our role.
implementing-
is
Yeah, I
actually
would get rid
implement.
of,
You don't need, the report didn't very action oriented, that's more.
no, just.
Yeah. I mean, we want an annual report, but it doesn't have to be in the
Doesn't need
thing.
to be in there.
I think it's more,
Signal is, implement the adopted.
let's just do it. Wherever it's possible to implement it, let's
Yeah.
include that and not just like accessibility, don't let it fall to the wayside.
Well,
It's gotta-
I think this is actually language I used with that CIP report because I think because I said, I think sometimes we forget about, you know, because we're not, you know, the CIP, it's always every quarter we get it, you know, and so that was sort of what I was thinking was like, oh, could we on a quarterly basis, be reminded, hey, we're falling behind on the, and I know Andy, I know you said we've made progress, but that's also a chance for Andy to say, hey, we've done X, Y, and Z. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, so,
So I actually like having an annual report because it holds us accountable to it.
yeah.
But maybe just the verb at the beginning is implement the government action plan, and we get,
Yeah. So instead of so implement and then take out through, and just say to include an annual report.
Okay.
anything else on this one?
So, under trees, you've got promote tree canopy, I'd like to add, to preserve and promote. And then the other one that, in a general category, I don't see under this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, which is sanitary sewer. Does that belong in here, or do we need something for that? I mean, it's environmental, but sanitary
More
sewer, you don't want.
infrastructure.
It's nothing too big and new on sanitary. You all did the big lift on sanitary. I think
But
we're
also, is that
feeling-
envir-
We're feeling like that
or
was
is
a
that
heavy policy
infrastructure?
lift, and we're in pretty good shape now.
You all should strive to talk as little about the sanitary sewer system as
That's
possible.
success,
Back
yes.
to where we were 4 years ago, we didn't have to talk about it. Unless we need to do that sewer master plan? Or is that,
That'll be included in the CIP discussion.
so nothing else on environment?
Do we need to,
10:31 mark, so.
can I ask something? Should we put anything about electric vehicles for the fossil fuel piece? I don't know. If that's too specific.
Electric vehicles will be under your energy plans, so
Okay.
that's,
Yeah, so it'll
Big
just be,
part of it.
that'll just include all that. Okay.
Okay. I think that's it then? So we used up all the time that we had on this one.
We caught back up.
Got back up. That was an hour. Hour's an hour and a half, so,
You jinxed us.
Yeah, but it's important for 2 years.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for the next turn of this. Is the plan to adopt it next week?
And
All right,
thanks to the staff for all your work on this.
So similar to past work plans and council priorities, how do we roll this out to both the community as well as like boards and commissions and?
So why don't we have a bit of a narrative on thoughts on that, but I'd like to get all of our boards and commissions informed about it, and to me, like one of the board and commission reviews is to make sure that they're sort of aligned with kind of the key, they might be doing other things, but they should certainly be aligned with.
Like,
what
for
the
example,
council's
like we spend a lot of time talking about being reactive to resident concerns and requests for transportation. Like, we need the CACT to be aligned with us on that, because
Right.
they're the first line of defense sometimes
Yeah.
when they come. So like, that feels like a more in-depth discussion than just, hey, here's the new council
Right.
priorities, right? Because that doesn't get to that nuance.
I'm opening a can of worms here, and we don't need to talk about this tonight, but one of the things we did on school board is we gave our boards and commissions a charge. So we said, this is your charge, and it's like, one of it was when we came back from COVID, this is your charge, like,
Yeah.
and so it's sort of a theme that every commission and council, so that could be something we talk about, that we give them some sort of guidance based on this document. Yeah, I don't know, that's a conversation for another day.
We did
but-
that maybe like 4 or 6 years ago, where we said,
Time. We did it right around the same time.
So what is the next step? Because this is the strategy, the priorities, and then, I'm new to this, so do we then do the work plan? Is there a 2-year work plan, or how does this work as the next steps? Obviously, next week, we review the updates and we vote on it.
So we would then provide you all with a regular quarterly report on progress towards these objectives, and we would keep the conversation going that way. I mean, this, and you'll see sort of the body of work coming before you over the course of the year, and you'll refer back to it and like sort of be able to reassess, are we doing the right things? Do we need to course correct as we're going? Does that answer your question?
Sort of, because I'm thinking back to the previous ones I've seen where it's like, okay, here's all the action, then we have these actions that are underneath each of these. And some of them might not be this year. Some of them, we might already be thinking, okay, that's next year, or it's, is there something?
Andy's come up with that, right?
Yeah.
Like detailed
Yeah,
report.
what's that next?
yeah, and I think something we've still got to wrestle with. And as we kind of, work towards the retreat and kind of through things, we were hoping to kind of land on 3 priorities, and focus kind of our energy, because I think if you look at the work plan, the quarterly updates we've done, kind of over the last couple of years, there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to, and here we are again, like we came out of this with about 20 things, and some of those are vague. There'll be multiple things under those. And so I worry again, a little bit, trying to be kind of, realistic about what things both council has the time to take on and what staff has the ability to support. And so we'll be continuing to work that, I think, kind of on the staff end, but my head starts to hurt coming up with a Gantt chart work plan for 20 things again, right? Like it's there is a capacity limitation for us to take things on.
Yeah, you can't do everything tomorrow. Get that.
For the, when we're all done and it's all signed, sealed, and delivered, could we do a press release with a link to it,
Sure.
that people could click on it, it would take them to the, would that be, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty easy to understand presentation of it.
Last time, I think Maggie Redden sort of turned it into kind of a very attractive presentation with lots of photographs and
Yeah, that was
it was an
nice.
engaging document, and so we would like to give you some drafts of that, and you could, after you've adopted, and see how it's being presented.
Great. Be a great, crisp, like 1-pager, right? If we can get it down, like you can have like the 5-page version that I think we had last year, but it'd be nice to have like a 1-page, like a
Press of elevator speech one.
like
Yeah.
Throw it
Alright,
into
we need
Claude
some
and
more
have them do an infographic. You might actually get a really good infographic
just
out of it.
need like 12-point font on it instead, so, okay. Anything,
That's right, yeah, it's gonna be big.
yeah, anything else? I don't think we're gonna hit schedule tonight since we're attriting council members.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you on Wednesday morning.
Great.
All right,
Good
thanks,
night, all.
everyone.
Council.
Thank you.